I thought Greg bought you.
I got it first.
Very good. Right. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this information session. If you'd like to stand during the put the card here. Just have a reminder to everyone that this briefing is being live streamed. And just moving on to apologies, we have an apology from Paul McMahon for absence. We have an apology from Alex Hewson for early departure. And today we have Alex Hewson, Jan Johansson and Joe Zervos on Zoom. Okay, and just to remind those who are on Zoom today that you must have your cameras on at all times. That's a new active from the Mayor. Yana, you might want to bring that camera online. Okay, our first up today, we have Thompson Park Playground Renewal. So over to Barbara and Megan, welcome.
Okay, I'm Megan Carpenter. I'm team leader Parks Planning and Recreation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kia ora, I'm Barbara. I'm project manager in Community Parks.
So I suppose the reason we're here today is there's an action that was sent to us in May, and it was following the petition that you received from the community about the Thompson Park modular structure. We just wanted to, I suppose, just get a sense of how to answer some of those questions before we report back to the board, and also get more information from you and share more information.
Should I push your button?
Oh, yeah. Forget about this.
It's it.
Thank you. So the things that you wanted us to do was looking at how we could accommodate a larger modular structure, and then the report was around options of reordering our play renewal within the coastal ward, and that we give you a schedule of renewals for local play space renewal budgets in the coastal ward, and how much is allocated for that. So I suppose, we could go over a little bit of the background. So back in December 23, during a routine inspection, the structure was deemed to be unsafe, and it was more structural than, I suppose, just general play safety. So the team, operations team, worked pretty hard with inspecting that weekly right up until they removed it after I Love Brighton in February. So they did a lot of work to keep that open, but it was deemed at that point that it was unsafe for us to keep the structure there. And I think it was highlighted when Barbara organised renewal that the structure kind of collapsed the moment a digger did touch it. So it was a good decision to remove that, and I don't think there's any argument around that from all of us. There was also a swing set that had some structure rust as well, so we removed it straight away back in December. We looked to replace this as a like-for-like replacement, and investigated options from lots of different play suppliers that, adhering to our play standards, New Zealand play standards. We ordered that equipment with the aim of being able to open the playground, I suppose, as soon as possible. And there was also limitations around our budget. So that was probably one of the main decisions around kind of moving the process forward, was that it was unfunded, and it was like, how can we come up with the best solution for our community with what funding we have available? So as per the briefing sheet, I have outlined what is in the Waitai Coastal-Burwood-Linwood local play space renewal. And from the wider perspective, that budget's usually for your local playgrounds. So that's the ones that, are smaller, often just include like a swing, a slide and a seesaw, walking distance from home. Whereas Thompson Park is for the wider community. So if in that long-term plan would usually have a specified line item, and you can see in the long-term plan there are projects that are specified specifically. So the local one is for those small playgrounds, and you can see some of them listed there that are coming up within your ward area. The budget that we're paying for this is from our community parks play item renewals, which is a citywide budget, and it's often used for situations where there might be 5 pieces of equipment in a park, and 4 of them are in good condition and 1 isn't, so we can use that budget to replace that, or it's for reactive stuff, like when we had the arson at Bromley Old Community Reserve, or if basket swings are stolen, those types of things. That's what that budget's for, and that's what we're funding this project from. And it also, Barbara's highlighted kind of the percentages of budget that's required out of that to fund what we're proposing thus far. And I suppose that's a little bit of the background. And then obviously there's been the concerns that were raised from the community through the petition and through the community board members. And that's led us to being here today. So I suppose we can kind of have some discussions around concerns, and then allowing us to fulfill that reporting requirement to come back to you.
Okay.
Is that a good background?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Sorry, it's hard to remember all these things.
No, that's fine. Do we have questions? Okay, so Celeste and Tim,
Joe and Alex.
Joe and Alex. So Celeste.
So this is just a bit more general to begin
Yeah.
with, but so there's a renewals budget, which is different to like a program budget for new playgrounds, is that right?
So the program budget, so that sits up high level. That's where we draw down 3 years of projects from.
Okay, yeah.
So citywide, how we're looking to do it. It used to be that we'd name every playground, but what was happening is sometimes another playground would pop up, and we, like what was the situation almost at Thompson Park now, and we sometimes wouldn't always have the ability to move funding around. So we've kind of moved now that the bigger play spaces, so like the Corsair Bays, Bishopdale Park, they'd be in Thompson Park, Broad Park, the bigger sites would be a line item in the LTP, and the smaller ones will start to bundle together in the community board areas, and then we would come and talk to you about those as they come up and discuss what projects are coming up, how we've come to the conclusion of those being the priorities going forward. And so within those, the Waitai Coastal-Burwood-Linwood project, the way that we prioritise which comes up next is done by asset condition, by its age, and then how it fits within that kind of wider network.
With regards to that, what about, because if you're talking about big playgrounds, just to use a comparison, one of the things that's missing from this list is the Parklands youth space,
Yeah,
which has disappeared from the long-term plan.
yeah. So that was a directive from our managers to only draw down the first 3 years of funding. So in that situation, we've drawn down year 1, and year 2 and 3 are sitting up at the program level. So that wasn't
Okay.
my decision. That was a decision
So that
from the
might be a
manager.
bigger question that we can look at later on is we need to have visibility over
Yeah, exactly.
the long-term plan, not just the first 3 years,
Yeah.
because communities want to know that parks disappeared and playgrounds
Yeah.
disappeared. Why is that and where's it disappeared into?
I'm happy to talk to you
Yeah.
about that at some point.
That would be good to park
Yeah.
that for a later discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks. Tim?
Just 2 questions. One is, when it was inspected, what school playgrounds a caretaker or a person who does this checking,
Mhm.
does it once a month?
Yeah.
Is that done, are those parks done once a month? Or
Yeah, so citywide, it's all done monthly, so our 400-ish playgrounds are inspected monthly. There has been a little bit of a change in the, and I suppose when that's happening for some sites, because we have struggled to get around them at times, so we would then focus on the larger, older sites monthly, and sometimes some of the newer sites have moved to like a 2-month inspection.
These ones. Sorry, so these ones are actually weekly at the moment, like the ones where we know there are some
Yeah.
issues that we need to monitor
Yeah,
that
yeah, I
actually goes to
understand that.
weekly.
Yeah, so Thompson
Yeah.
in December moved to a weekly inspection.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around why all of a sudden, hey, it's dangerous, we didn't know a month,
Yeah.
2 months or 5 months.
There was a little bit of an indication that there was risk, like we had noted it leading into December, but I think we didn't understand at that point how bad that risk was until one of the inspectors looked at it and had concerns, and then we actually then had building inspectors and engineers and everyone come on
Yeah.
board, and it was raised.
Yeah.
It was all that risk was heightened. Yeah.
And just on the chart where it's got the other playgrounds,
Yeah.
you've got FY's the year 25. What's the 26 at the end? Was it supposed to be at 9?
It could be a mistake.
Hmm,
Yes, it's a mistake.
So it's tree 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose it'll come around pretty quick, eh?
Yeah, and and I suppose something to bear in mind is that there's year 1 of the next LTP coming up, and there's a reasonable amount of funding starting from year 4. So some of those projects actually might get delivered in 28 because there'll be funding available to finish them. That's just what's happened with that project and its funding. It's kind of been pushed a little bit. So yeah, and 2028 we'll be looking to probably finish those ones off at least, and then there's a whole lot of ones that are sitting after that.
Okay, Joe.
And probably another thing to note is things do change a bit, and I think I've written that in this information sheet. You know, like condition data, environmental conditions can mean that some playgrounds deteriorate faster than ones we expected. So at this point in time, like there's one that we're already thinking about bringing forward because we know its condition is deteriorating faster than some of them on the list.
Okay, thanks for that. I've just got a few questions, and one of them was to do with the loss of the board's delegation about the playgrounds, and why has that been removed, and what can we do to regain that delegation?
Yeah, I have a little bit of information about that. So, the parks manager determined for local play spaces that when the renewal of equipment is, I suppose, like for like, so play value is similar to similar, that the decision should sit with the asset owner. In regards to the delegation and the delegations register that talks about structures on parks and the board's approving, we would still look to get approval for sites that involve a higher level of community engagement and a bigger site. So yeah, I may have contradicted myself a little bit with that answer with our previous discussions, and that's probably one thing.
Yeah, one of the things that really concerns me is that we haven't seen a list of what was put forward for the LTP for the coming year's investments in parks. Prior to this board, the last board was presented a list, and I had questions regarding that list because you had funding on the list for parks that were in the red zone and no longer exist. And I asked if that funding could be put towards other parks, and I've never really had an answer for that.
I think that list, sorry, I interrupted.
That's one thing that we need transparency with, and to know what happened to that funding. Did it get reinvested into the ward? And where did it go, or did it just disappear?
I think that list, and I do remember when this happened, was based on asset condition, not actual budgets for playgrounds. So I think came up. So if Seaview Park, I could be saying the wrong park, had a swing set that was in poor condition, it popped up on that list, and in the list said playground renewal, but actually it was just that one item in that park. And I do remember those lists going out, and I did have concerns about it, and it was raised, I think, at that point in time.
Yeah, I think I had playground
I
renewal.
think that's unfortunate. Yeah.
The playground renewal plus hard surface renewals in several different places, and I think we need to actually be kept up to date with the transparency around that.
I would imagine that the community developer will know what title it means. The parks. Yeah.
My title?
Like Brady's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the manager of community parks and possibly the capital advisor for parks will come round after the LTPs.
Yeah.
So in regards to
they're going to come round and talk about what's coming up in parks for the next 3 years.
Okay, and in regards to Thompson Park, what can we do to actually try to get additional funding and additional equipment into this park? Because at the moment, with what is what you're getting to replace it with, it's not fit for purpose for the amount of people and the groups and the age group to use it.
So we have prepared a few options. At this point in time, I suppose just because of commercial sensitivity, like we don't want to give you the items, but it's obviously shared publicly, and yeah. So it's public, but yeah.
So in reading that, there is an opportunity to invest further into the park?
Yeah, I'll let Barbara share her options. Some of the options are unfunded, so I suppose that's what we probably need to talk a little bit about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Yes, I'm relatively new to Christchurch, but I did get the gist that Thompson Park is really important to you. So I actually listened to the last meeting where the petition was presented, and we have looked into options and how we can actually improve it. So this is just up for discussion, but just outlining what's there. There's a bit of an echo. Is that normal?
That's because that one's on.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the situation we had is because the items needed to come out because of health and safety reasons, and our focus was to replace them as fast as possible, like for like. So I did an initial investigation of what the options are and what would fit within that budget, where Megan already said it's a citywide budget, so we need to make sure that we can make it fit within that budget. So we looked at options, and ultimately we went with the option that has been presented to you, to further make sure that the costs weren't exploding at that point with the modules fitting next to each other, like the swing and the module. We decided to put them both in the same place. The other thinking around that was there are a few junior items plus the stairs going up to the slide, which is nicely located close to the picnic tables, which will actually be quite good for families with young kids. So it made sense to have it in that space. Now I understand the concerns about the size of it. So we looked into it, and there is an option that we could potentially increase the size of it to account for the tunnel that I believe was quite valued by the community, and create slightly bigger platforms, and would still fit in the footprint. That is one option we could take into account. The only thing I need to point out is right now the equipment is expected to arrive in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll go right into putting it into the ground, making sure there is the shortest time possible with an empty space. If we were to decide to extend the existing or the purchase module, it will potentially add another 2 to 3 weeks to it. But that would be a possibility. That's an additional 20K, which Megan and I discussed is probably the maximum that we can do and include. I believe there were conversations previously with Ellen Bridie about the cost to create exactly the same that was there before. If we would go for, I'll just call it a replica for the sake of it. If we were to go for a replica, I've actually calculated a rough cost estimate that would actually be 100K more of what we had put aside right now, and that's just not possible within the budget. And I don't think it would be a good alternative, because that would probably require some fundraising, and that would mean a long time without having any equipment in that space. So the alternative option that we could look into is, if the board is interested to fundraise with the community, we could go ahead with either the proposal we put forward or the slightly larger module that still fits in that space, and that gives us a fully functioning playground again. And then there is that space to the side where the swings used to be. So we can just leave the edging and the softball as it is right now, and possibly look at a module for the slightly older kids to include that in the play space, if money for that would be fundraised. And then we can, actually it would be great, because it would create a nice flow, especially for larger groups, kind of traveling through the whole play space and not just staying put in that one space. So if that is something that could be considered, I'm happy to work with the board on that. I do have the images. I'm not quite sure how we can bring those up. I can probably pass it around.
Could they also be sent to board members by email that are on Zoom?
Can you, we probably won't be able to do that today, Alex, but if Barbara can send
I'll
it
pass
to
it
me
around.
early next week, then I can share it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a slightly larger option. So like spending 20,000 more does start to fit some of the requirements that the community have. And I suppose it's a good option in regards to, it can still be delivered before summer, kind of.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were going to go look for the
Pardon?
replica, you know, like it could be adding a lot of time, and yeah.
Sorry, is something?
Have you got any more questions, Jo?
Yeah. In regards to that, like you're talking about, some of the things that are on the new park that you're buying are actually on the toddlers playground as well, and we're looking to actually replace those. And the other question is, when it comes to actually putting something for the smaller kids, it's probably better to separate them away from the skating rink or the skate park.
Yeah, sorry, to answer your first question about the rest of the equipment, are you asking when is that due for renewal?
No, well, I know on the, what do you call it, the park thing that you bought, it's got like a noughts and crosses and tunnel slides similar to what already exists in the little like under 5-year-olds section, and it's pity to have two kind of things duplicating within one park.
So the modular structure that's proposed is for 8 to 14-year-olds, isn't it? And so we included some stuff at a lower level, so it allowed for younger siblings to interact with their older siblings. And in regards to the skate park versus junior, lots of young children use skate parks. I think it's important that we provide facilities for the wider family altogether. I know my younger kids would go to that skate park and then play in the playground, so I think it's good that there's that connection, and lots of older kids in the skating and scootering will do interact really well with young children and help them out and support and teach them, so I think it is good to ensure we have that connection.
Yeah, I wasn't quite getting at that. I was getting more to it's probably a bit more safer to have the young kids away from getting hit by skateboards and things compared to the older kids, and the older kids having something that they can play on and be quite boisterous to look after the younger kids. But in regards to having a couple of things on that module that are actually duplicated within the same park, it would be good to have something totally different.
Thanks, Jo. Alex?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I met with Al, Brady and a few other people a few weeks back, and we talked about, I raised the question of whether or not we could move the swings to another location so we could provide for additional modules in the future. So I guess my question is with one of the options, which is the 20K, to create a larger footprint and a couple of extra things, is there still that ability to add on additional modules should we be able to fundraise in the future through things like the annual plan or the long-term plan? That's the first question. And then the second question is in relation to, if we did do a like-for-like replacement, would that have to be 200K? This is costing 100K. That we'd have to fundraise externally if we've already bought the structure.
So if you want to do a completely different structure, we cannot put anything in the ground right now, and you might potentially be without a playground for older kids for quite some time until you have that funding. If we were to put in what we have now, or the slightly more expensive option that I'll send through, we can have a fully functioning playground, and if you do fundraise funding, we can find another spot to put something else in. Is that what you're asking?
Is that where the swings are currently in the design? Because Al and I talked about moving the swings back to a different location so that we can add the additional modules on if we fundraise or got more money to what's already going in now. So is that where those additional...
So the issue with that is, if we don't really know what we're putting in, with play equipment, there are always free zones or fall zones. So you can't just put any equipment next to the other. I know it always looks like it's huge spacing, but there is reason for it. There are fall zones, and especially with the fort being higher, we can't really put much close to it. So while the swing fits into that space, the minute you start putting something challenging for older kids, then you probably have a much wider fall zone around it. So it wouldn't really make much sense to put anything in. And if we were to extend in terms of really adding onto that module that we've put in, that is practically really hard to do and really expensive. So I would highly recommend not to do that.
Perfect. And then just another question. So is this, okay, a couple of questions actually, sorry. So in terms of process, is this gonna come to the board at an ordinary meeting to sign off on, or is this the only thing we're gonna have a chance to raise those?
I'm just going to
thoughts and
provide a
questions?
provide a steer today, Alex.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then my second question was, so if we do the sort of the larger footprint, which costs a little bit extra, and then we somehow get more money in an annual plan or a long-term plan, there will be options to put that in Thompson Park as well, sort of near the play space.
Yes. Yeah, there's plenty of space in Thompson Park for other play equipment.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Would it be possible when you send out the email, or once you finish those commercial sort of commercially sensitive options, to get options of those additional modules in addition to the one for 20K that you're looking at now? So we can get a ballpark figure of what we need to sort of fundraise for an annual plan or publicly.
So I've got at least 5 catalogs and 1,000 modules to choose from. So we highly appreciate if you can come back to me with the expectations or like the age group you envision and what you feel is missing from what we're putting in the ground right now. And that will help me to provide some options to you. Then I can probably limit it to, I don't know, 3 to 5. If you can, that would also be good. If you can let me know how many options you would like to see, and then I can work something out.
Yeah, and
wonderful. Thank you.
I suppose for variety, you might want to question whether you would put another modular structure in when you already have 2. Could be something else that caters for a large number of people, if that's what the desire was. Like the risk and the challenge in the large number of people could be something that looks quite different. And we can kind of support you with those discussions or ideas.
And then really quickly, lastly, Jackie, could you just send, or could someone like messenger me a photo of the design that's going around, and I could send it to Joe as well, just so we can see it before Monday?
Hang around later.
So just to clarify for next step, so early next week, can we work together on something that we can share with the board as a whole, as in ideas that you present in and the type of feedback that you're seeking, so you can provide the advice with estimated costs, timeframes, but also taking into consideration the time in which the new modules arrive in, and then we'll get a steer from the board before the installation, if it goes ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, do we all understand that? Alex, you got that? So that's just, everything's going to come around to us to have a look at
Next week.
And then we'll make a decision on how to proceed forward. So there's
just going back to my first question, when do we get that general bigger picture view of, you know, how those things in terms of the playground network plan, things like that, which, you know, I found out during the long-term plan what that idea was. Was that surprise?
The play space network plan is my project. And we're looking to extend a memo out to the boards really soon. Because the idea is that there's a draft to council by December. So there'll be workshops that the boards get invited to, and so you can kind of learn a little bit more about what that is. Are you then talking about how do you find, when you're going to find out more about what budgets are coming forward?
I think probably some feedback from community boards and councillors has been that we don't have visibility of the sort of project budgets. And so then it's hard to make decisions around substitutions and things in terms of prioritisation. And also things have disappeared off because I'm still unclear why the Parklands one isn't listed on this, because it actually falls within the budget years shown here. So there's some questions I have around the whole process basically, and I think Thompson Park illustrates some of the questions quite neatly in terms of not having clarity. So thank you.
Just one question I have, are you wanting us to send a report back, or are we going to be okay with just these discussions?
These discussions to start with until we've got an agreed majority steer from the board. And then from then, I suppose if it's drastically just different from the delegation the park manager has, then we'll need a report. But if not, then even just a memo, just to say this is the next steps, which we can attach to one of our area reports, so it's available to the public as well.
That's cool.
Okay, any more questions? All good? Thanks. Oh, hang on, Yanni, you've got a question?
I mean, sorry, just picking up a little bit on Celeste's point, like, I was a little bit concerned that the Aranui playground was going to get deferred, and we haven't really had a chance to talk about that.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the areas where, you know, that's a community that we don't have very much engagement with at all, and people love engaging over playgrounds, as we've seen with Thompson. So I guess I just want to make sure that we do have that visibility about how we can make sure that things that we think are going to happen can be done with communities as well.
Yeah, I think, so I'll talk, when I get back to work next week, I can talk to the Capital and Parks Advisor about that and just find out how she plans to communicate with you all, and then how we get the information to support those discussions.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I commented about the Aranui one because one was coming up, but it wouldn't be deferred for 5 years. It's just that this other one might just start moving up because that community could be at risk of losing their playground. And it's England, which is in Wainoni. So it's kind of just making sure that we have it right, but we do need to share that with you so that we're making the right decision.
And just the final question from me is, I know that asset maturity management report was really damning on our understanding of facilities conditions. When are we likely to have a good understanding of the condition of our playgrounds?
So we're doing some improvements now on our condition assessment. So the playground standards specify that we should be doing annual or biannual inspections by someone that's not in council. It's not the exact wording, but it should be by an individual that's not the person that's always checking it. So we're looking to get a more thorough process with that so that our condition information is better. And that's something that's happening right now. Yeah.
Excellent, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Okay, take a 5-minute break.
I'm off now. Sorry, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, Alex.
Oh, bye, Alex.
Where are you?
Thank you. Bye. Yeah.
and now I'm going to welcome Lucy, Tanya and Mark and to talk about the council events process. Welcome.
Thank you. Awesome. Got a jazzy presentation that's
Excellent.
popping up as well. Cool. So, kia ora koutou. So I'm Lucy Blackmore. So I'm the manager of the events and arts team for the Christchurch City Council, and I'm here with Mark Royal, who's the team leader of the events production team, who do the delivery side, and Tanya Chokich, who is the events partnerships team leader. So we thought we'd, do I use this to jump slides?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Potentially.
Give me a moment.
Okay. Just hold a moment to get into the relevant slide bit.
On the side, just check if it's on. Outside.
Oh, it's vibrating. There you go. It's got to be a good sign. Hey!
Yay, yay. Well done.
Awesome. Cool. So we'll just jump into talking a little bit about what we do. So when Mark.
Sure. So I've been with the team for just coming up 6 years. I've been put in the team leader role for the last couple of months, so it's a really new role for me. Collectively, we produce around 12 events a year listed up here. So they range from like concert events to more like family focused kids events. The two key events that we actually do in Brighton are winter fireworks and kite day.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm not the whole event partnerships team. I am but one. We're a team of about 6. We provide advice and support to the events and film industry. We do this primarily through our event permit process or filming process. And we also provide general event and filming support and advice as required. We also support event activity through funding avenues, which we're going to be coming to council this week for our Events and Festivals Fund. And we've got a few other funds for sports events, bidding, and our event seating fund. And we also manage the city's events website, What's On.
Cool. So we thought today we were going to start by taking you through the council process for events from a permitting perspective, and then we'll also touch on the process around the 2 events that we deliver out in New Brighton as well. Cool.
So we're doing, okay, so not every event in public space requires an event permit, so the event must meet certain criteria. One that's non-negotiable from our perspective is it has to be open for general public to attend, so private activity doesn't come through our team for an event permit. And then we look at other things like the impact that the event may have on roads or footpaths, or whether there's any other council approvals required, liquor licensing, building, resource consents, all that kind of stuff. So those are the kinds of things we look at when we determine whether or not an event permit is required. Next, please. So the actual event permit process, it's a really fun one. So the application's online. Once we determine if you need one, you fill it in, the event organiser fills it in, it wings its way to us. We then book the space that they've requested, and we have a look to see what other information we might require. Often we need health and safety plans, we need public liability insurance, site plans, all those kinds of things. We let them know what they need to do as well. So we would say, you're going to have alcohol, you need to go and get a liquor license, or you're having this piece of infrastructure, you need to go and get a building consent. We'll provide contacts for them and we'll help them through those processes as well. We send out stakeholder notifications. So we have internal, so council stakeholders, and external, so police, CDHB, all those kinds of people, just to give them an FYI, this is what's come through. They can then come back to us with any feedback that they might have, and that's when we start negotiations between the event organiser and our stakeholders. So we might need to make some changes here and there just so that everybody's happy. Throughout that whole process, we're continually communicating with stakeholders and with the event organisers, and then once all their conditions are met and everybody's happy on both sides, that's when we issue an event permit, and that is often like literally just before the event day takes place. It's not hugely in advance. The process can take anywhere from about 1 to 2 years to 6 weeks minimum to go through the event permit process, depending on the complexity of the event. What's required? Are we using spaces that have never been used for events before? Do we need to get new stakeholders on board? That kind of thing, and it all takes time.
Cool. That's it. Awesome. So jumping into the council produced events, so the ones that we have coming up, we've got winter fireworks, which I hope they're aware of next week, and then next year on February the 1st we have our Kite Day event. So for both of these events we follow the same process, so receiving the event permit and going through the the same pieces of information required. So in terms of communication, consultation requirements with the local community and stakeholders do vary depending on the size and scale of the event. So for example, for an event like winter fireworks, we do a 2-month out notification period, and that's a lot to do with the traffic management, the road closures, ensuring that everyone's informed and on board. But then for an event like Kite Day, the requirements are less so, given the impacts on the event in terms of the traffic management process. And then post-event, we go through a debrief process for learnings to be taken on board for future events and working with various stakeholders as well. So here's an example of what was on the letter that was sent out for the notification process for winter fireworks. So there's, I believe, 2 of these letters that go out, one that's 2 months out, and then we had one that went out recently.
It's last week, once the traffic side of things had a chance for feedback from the public and sort of formalise that with the traffic provider. There's also a whole lot of information goes with that road closure map. Sort of outlining.
Oh yeah, the letter. Just a map, there you go.
The times of the event and what's involved.
All that information. Awesome. So we thought that was a brief sort of overview. We didn't want to load up with too much information, but thought it might be easier just to open it up for any questions that anyone may have. Here we go.
Okay, I'm Kelly Vignani.
First, thanks for the great work that you do. It's really appreciated by many people in the city. Do you have much interaction with venues over time? Do you do any events? Town hall, etc.?
Yeah, sorry. For me personally, for the stuff, the projects I've worked on with the team since I've been here, not a great deal, but we do produce a yearly event called Go Live Festival that is held at the town hall. It's sort of a partnership. We get we do that kind of community rate to help deliver the event at the venue.
In terms of the cost, Mark, did you say? A community rate, did you say?
Yes, yeah. So a reduction in the hire.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the partnerships. But, it's been quite a successful festival. It's sort of built year on year. And we're in year 4 this year. It's coming up in August. We also did an event a year or so ago that we trialled a new project called Rock the Park. And it was in partnership with MediaWorks and The Rock and Vince Otahi, and we staged that at Hagley Park.
Nice.
That was great. That was the first time we trialled having an offering to the public there could be a licensed component to an event that we produced.
Yeah. And did they go?
They delivered that. Yeah, it was great. We had around 6,500 in attendance, and next to no incidents, especially for an event that produced alcohol. I think we had 3 ejections for the day, which was a great result.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yanni?
Just wondering if you guys are in charge of Q2, and I'm just wondering how you debrief from the events that have been held there, because particularly after Juicy Fest, I had a lot of complaints with broken staff litter. I don't know if you went and had a look when it was actually on, but we put in an alcohol ban. It didn't seem to make any kind of difference. There were a lot of people that were parking up on the grass fields at Q2, driving over the park. Just trying to get a sense of what the process is around how you allocate Q2 for events and what criteria you have around suitable operators.
I can ask, sorry. So Q2 we're bound by the district plan for the number of events that can take place there. So currently there's 3 in the district plan that are allowed to take place. We do currently have or are going to have resource consent submissions to allow for slightly more. So that's with the resource consenting team to consider what those are. Juicy Fest this year was the first time that we had it. And yes, we did deal with some feedback about the rubbish afterwards. In conjunction with parks, it was determined that some of the rubbish that had been around the outskirts of that park was there prior to Juicy Fest taking place. However, we did request Juicy Fest organisers for their team come back to do like multiple sweeps of the park until we were satisfied that it had been cleaned. So going forward, the process that they require to go through is just the same event permit process, which goes through the whole stakeholder process. We're not in charge of QE2. To start with that question, it's a parks asset, it's not our asset. We get their permission in addition to all the other stakeholders who are part of that group, which is part of the QE2 Rec Centre, this School of Gymnastics. I think the schools that are there are all part of the stakeholder group as well. So maybe Santa Parade officers might be in on that as well.
So there's different unit of council that weighs up whether the operator's suitable to go in there or not, and whether they've,
Complied.
well or not, or they've got concerns.
Yeah, I understand post-JUCFS, they're not deemed unsuitable to be in that particular location. If that's kind of like what you're angling at, they, as far as all of the conditions outside of the rubbish one, which we will be addressing, we'll be tighter on that when they come back, because they have applied to come back next year. There was nothing outstanding that would have happened. With the alcohol ban, that is to go outside the venue, and that's to allow the police to enforce untoward behaviour because of alcohol. They have the right to confiscate alcohol and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's on the police to maintain.
So do we have any things there was a lot of people tailgating. So I guess is that just sort of expected?
What do you mean?
That's when people pick up trucks and marquees and chili bins and barbecues and set up and just drive over the park and just set up, which is great. I don't personally, I didn't do it. But I just kind of wondered, in terms of, I guess just the health of the park, basically, that, and also because of the time that we went around the alcohol ban, it struck me as quite odd that was sort of able to occur.
I hadn't heard that feedback at all. This is the first time that I've heard that.
About what's the process to kind of understand, review events that have taken place and look at what's happened versus suitability going forward.
Well, that's definitely not allowed. I mean, if that's what it is, I wouldn't say we allow that. That's certainly something we'll be bringing to their attention, and ensuring they have security, perhaps roaming the perimeter of the event and around the outskirts there.
Maybe it's part of our consenting or licensing that we didn't put enough thought into, controlling access. I don't know, because I wasn't, involved. I just went to have a look at what was going on and got some feedback from people in the community.
Interesting.
But anyway, just the only other thing is, Kite Day was great, but it was so successful. And I wonder if you're going to do anything to improve traffic management, more engagement with people, because I did get some feedback from people. Well, they loved so many people going to New Brighton on that day. I think the New Brighton market was on as well. It was quite, a tricky situation.
No, it was. I had a really good catch up with some Brighton projects, and Martha and Emily post-event to work through a lot of that as well, because the date of the event that's determined by the tides coincided with the first market of the season, which meant for the Brighton market, there were a number of attendees who went from the event across to the market, which caused a lot more traffic through those spaces. So what we're looking at for next year, we'll be implementing some traffic management, which we hadn't done for the event, because previously it hadn't been an issue. I don't think it's coinciding next year with the market, but regardless, we will do it just for extra safety. And we're also looking at how we can put together to ensure that we're implementing more waste management around those outskirt areas, not just the event site, to make sure that we can mitigate some of those issues.
The weather was to blame too, though.
It was a glorious day. Yeah.
Thank you, Yanni. We've got Joe on Zoom.
Just following on from Yanni's comments about QE2, and after all of the concerts, there have been quite a bit of rubbish left on site, and I actually went around and picked up a whole lot myself, because the number of residents that were complaining and had put in reports, there had been no action within so many days of the concert. And I'm just wondering if there's something in place with that will actually enforce this.
Thank you for that question. There typically is. So with QE2, we do have pre-event site inspections and post-event site inspections, where a staff member, typically a parks member as well, and also the event organiser, they'll go on site before the event, they'll check out the state of the site, any existing damage or areas of concern will be noted, and then the same would happen after the event had taken place. But I'll take your feedback on board, and that's how we typically would address these concerns. Is what we do for the likes of Hagley Park, or if we have events in the central city, we do that as well, and it's normally quite effective. But we'll tighten up that process, I think, going forward for the upcoming event season, just formalise it maybe.
One of the big concerns was there were a lot of the aluminium cans on the sports field, and instead of picking them up, a lawnmower went over them and just shredded them into pieces, which left a whole lot of little bits of metal all over the sports field. So it would be really good if it was done more or less straight away, so that we're not actually facing that issue.
Yeah, it is supposed to be done straight away. So I think maybe we'll be revisiting the timing of some of our post-event site inspections. I do wonder whether or not public holidays might have had something to do with it. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't help from a staffing perspective, but we'll try and tighten that up. If the sports fields there are getting upgraded as well, it means that we won't be able to host events in that space. So the use of that space from an event perspective, for a large event perspective, it's limited. So it won't be ongoing forever.
Yeah, and the other thing is with events like the Coast to Coast and other private events which are hosted at New Brighton, do you have like a pre-inspection about getting everything clean and tidy, making sure the toilets are stocked with toilet paper and all those kind of things before the event as well as post clean?
So our pre and post site inspections don't go to that level of detail. So those requests would sit with the parks. So the parks team have their kind of like set tasks that they're requested to do and that they take on board. So things like stocking the toilets, cleaning spaces that are being used and stuff like that, that would sit with the parks team.
Is it up to the event host to organise that, or do they automatically find out through you guys?
Yeah, so we would notify them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jo. Celeste and Greg.
Thank you for coming out. It's really cool to see you guys in person, and also to kind of get a bit more detail about the events, because we're lucky to have so many great events in the what you guys do. Just prior to events, is there, I know we get some stuff around traffic management, but is there kind of a general list of like, we've put in place things, so we've got extra bins, we've just some general information, because we often get quite a lot of questions when we have to go back and ask. But is there kind of like here's a quick overview of what we've got in place for the day for us to sort of, I know you don't have much time, it sounds like, between issuing permits but sometimes actually just getting a little bit of detail. We've got bins here, and we've got, so when people say there's no extra bins, we can say, well, actually, there's some bins here. Yeah.
So, well, as part of the event permit process, we notify the community recreation advisor for the particular space where the event's going to be held. So I would have thought that information could have been passed on to the community board via that avenue. They get all of the notifications for all of the events that we put on. They're part of our internal stakeholder lists.
And part of the permits thing, so with the waste management.
Oh, yeah.
Has to be integrated.
Yeah. So we have all of the information which we can pass on.
So I don't know, because it could possibly, we have seen a lot of emails, but if we don't get that information, it might be just helpful, because we get the stop work notices and they do have quite a lot of useful information on it. We can refer back to that when we get inquiries. Just something like that before the event gives us a bit of an overview, because often we ask the questions afterwards, but it's just not very timely.
Even like a last minute kind of check in with you guys there. Here's the final delivery part.
Here's the plan. Any questions? In that way, it actually closes off some of those things.
Would that be for permitted and produced?
I would say just the
big ones.
The big ones.
Because the big ones that would be relative.
Maybe send out something like you send to the affected residents.
So the thing is, when you go to the road closure subcommittee, for example, sometimes there's a map and a little description of what's going to happen and when. Like if we have something similar like that for events that we can share with the board, because that will be quite similar to our start work notices, and that gives them all the relevant information.
And I guess too, if there's any updates to changes in plan from a previous year, we would, it's been fairly similar year on year. We provide a little.
That'd be great.
Just so you show like we've taken on feedback.
Information we've got anyway.
Yeah, without duplicating any work, if you've got it there, just if it could be included in some of that.
Sure, because we have upgraded the waste plan for fireworks this year as well, with additional bins in the mall.
Awesome. I think sometimes we get those questions, that would be helpful. Thank you. And then the other quick ones from me are does council work with ECAN around public transport planning? It does.
Yeah, well, we definitely for this year.
Okay, cool, well, that's really good.
Yeah.
Because I know there's been some challenges in the past where people kind of, it's, you know, one of those things, you can't manage everything, but
It's a very complex
yeah.
area to manage traffic for a high volume of people.
Yeah.
And I know the team have looked at it year on year to try and keep refining it, and it's a really hard thing to get 100% right. But what they have done this year is they used a private bus company, I believe, last year, and some issues around that, so we part of the can. They put additional services on to help manage capacity.
So it's not it's just an increase of the bus service, so people may want to catch
Free ride
parking
home.
road signs and then either can have a free ride home.
Will we get some good information?
That's in the notification.
Okay,
letter.
great. It goes to the recreation advisor?
And the resident.
Oh, that'd be great, because sometimes we can also share that online, because people, it's just another source of information. People know they can get bus home for free, which can be quite appealing. And then the final question, sorry, is the events and funding, is that something?
So that's for new events. That's for new events that are taking place in the city. So it's to kind of like a startup kind of fund. It's not big. It's I think $72,000 at the moment. It's open year round, and there's information if you look up funding on the council website. There's information there about it.
Okay, so for new events that start, they could be on the website for that particular fund.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Liz. Greg?
Thank you. Just following up on Joe's comment before about the rubbish, and obviously we're picking on Q2 because it's one we've sort of discussed. In the contracts or the permits for them, is there a time frame that they're given initially for tidying of rubbish particularly? And then is it checked by council or is it on the?
It's part of the post-event debrief. Debrief is within that time frame. So I think just from memory, because it's the team that do these permits, so just bear with me here because I don't do them so much. I think it's once the infrastructure is off-site. So for some people that can take a week to get all the fencing and all that kind of jazz off-site, because we want to make sure they leave the site in the same condition that they got it. So that's typically when it does take place. So that's the requirement.
Yeah, because just like thinking of myself, in summer your grass grows really fast, and with the comment about the cans being mowed up, it's some of that week-long period can be a really long time to leave a sports field and not have it kept and maintained. Whether it's just a consideration to have is that it's a 24-hour period that the rubbish needs to be cleared from those areas for them, and then outside of that it can be a council clean-up area, and then they're invoiced back for that works. Because the worst thing you want is sort of playing on those surfaces with shards of can in their leg.
You don't want that at all.
Particularly in a sports field situation like that.
Yeah, generally with the council produced events, I don't presume a lot of the bigger private events, I know Hagley they do this like team event sort of you work in a pretty rigorous plan with the waste kind of sorters, so they'll do a litter pick during the event, so it's mitigating some of that mess, and then they'll do a post event like the day after, so it's done quite promptly. So I presume it does take a while to get the infrastructure out, but they should be doing.
Yeah, I know. I
the cleaning.
organised something last year, and it was literally as we finished for the day, we had a bunch of people walk around, clear the area. It was at a smaller scale, but it didn't take much when you're doing it at the time compared to having to go back when the wind's caught it and blowing it further as well.
Yeah.
Could the board get talk to the staff who are responsible for QE2 at some point? Because I'm just really concerned.
Really concerned with regard to?
Well, just the timeliness of and making sure that they're doing what they say they're going to do. So understanding the kind of conditions and how they're monitored.
Okay, so who is it you're actually wanting to?
Well, it's
you
not
can
the
come talk
team,
to us. Yeah, you can come talk to our team if you want, or like the person who did the permit. Yeah.
I mean, some feedback was given after that, and I think it was followed up on. So I think when I'm reasonably comfortable personally, because I got the same things, but I think that was
one way to get on top of that would be to enforce the alcohol ban in the area.
Yeah, where did that come from? Right, do we have any more questions from the board? No, you're good? Okay, thank you so much. Oh, you do, Yanni? Yeah.
Oh yeah, just one point. Was just wondering, we've got some really good local events that are quite small, and I guess one thing I don't understand is at what point would we get you involved? Do you only do sort of bigger events, like, so the support for like smaller community type events, but obviously we've got the Isle of Brighton event.
What kind of support are you thinking?
Just like events planning,
So we work with like those events through the event permit process, but
Right.
that's just us kind of like acting on the request of the event organizer. We don't necessarily say, this is how you can develop your event and make it amazing.
Yeah.
Like, is that the kind of advice you're
yeah,
thinking?
like if there was access to things that, like, you know, instead of us funding every group to go and hire certain equipment, if we had equipment as council, is there a way that we look and say, actually, we've got this equipment, you could use it for this event, or
Yep, so we're aware of isn't there a resources list that I think it's on the council website, which is currently, I'm in the process of updating the various like free and community rate infrastructure and stuff that's available. So like marquees, sound systems and all that kind of stuff. So we have that, it's on the website, it's on the council
The
website.
community records have some.
Yeah, the Rickies have some infrastructure and if we're aware of, you know, these kinds of things, we'll absolutely let people know.
And I guess like a capacity thing for the events team, like we're a team of 3 at the moment producing all their work, so we're sort of focus on.
so you're happy to give advice if
Okay.
people approach you.
Yeah.
Chris just wants to say something here.
Yeah, so we do access all of that. So, you know, as a local team, we're safe for Isle of Brighton. Obviously, we work with this team. The rec advisors have all got equipment that they access for these events as well. So that all happens anyway. So I don't know if there's something more you're looking for.
No, just like, I mean, I guess just looking at like, you know, well, I mean, a classic was like, we had a Bromley thing that was going on and someone in council or maybe Christchurch said, put Tiki on a tram, when actually it would have been great to have Tiki coming to like Bromley, for example, you know, but no one really thought of the local event. It was all kind of, you know, go into the central city, do that, but actually what a lost opportunity just to kind of go, hey, you know, we've got this, someone that we're working with, thinking about what's happening in the local community.
Okay, we can talk about
So
that
that's
in a
sort of
local.
stuff, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I've certainly.
Thank you.
Board members, we will start sharp on 4:45, so please all return to your seats at that point. Okay?
Make your cup of tea now.
Yeah.
This is probably one I can all want to speak to you about.
Yeah, I think Lynette's got some views as well.
Please come through.
Welcome back, everyone. And I'd like to welcome, we've got Peter. Yes, we've got Peter and Stacey, but I'm not sure. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourselves to start.
I'm Peter Borden, I'm the Senior Project Manager in the Transport Delivery team.
Thank you.
For managing this, and I'm introduced to the Stantec team.
Yeah, I'm Stacey Lloyd. I'm a traffic engineer at Stantec, and I've been working on the SURF project mainly, but also now onto this traffic.
And Jan Paulson's from Stantec as well, and yes, traffic engineer there as well, and working on this Bromley action plan as well.
My name's Charlotte. I'm a graduate transport planner as well, just assistant on both SURF and now action plan.
Okay, so would you like questions as we go or at the end?
Probably at the end.
At the end?
We've got a lot to get through. Good choice. What we're trying to do is we're here to give the board easy access to information about it, interact with it. So what we want is your guidance on, you know the community best.
Yes.
What sort of a steer do you want us to?
Yeah. Do you want to push it? Whoever's talking, do you want to push?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm an apology for early departure too, so just to let you know, when I leave, it's not, don't take a
reflection on it.
Do you want to push it in? Okay.
It should be working.
So it was working before.
No, two little buttons
Lit up red?
on the front.
It's lit up.
Lit up red. It should be green.
Mine.
Oh, okay, red. Okay, all right.
Both
Yeah.
went on my end. Can we turn those off?
So what we're after coming out is, if we can, get your guidance on what streets are the issues on, which blocks, what sites do you think the priorities lie on that fit within the existing budget, and what we need for subsequent budgets. The information, there's a lot behind it. There's a lot behind it in terms of traffic count data and traffic turning and all of the rest of this sort of stuff. We're going to cut to the chase. Charlotte will get a GIS up on there. All of the sites will be there along with some recommendations, and you can pick and choose query and make your choices. Charlotte will be able to record those, and then we'll be able to come back to you.
Sorry, just before we start, because there'll be people watching online, are we able to get a copy of the presentation uploaded or sent through?
So the presentation's being streamed, so that should be online.
Yep, this is live. I don't have a copy. This is what's being shared by Stantec.
Okay. You'd like a copy?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying, Yanni?
Yeah, it's easier for us to see it on the screen if we can, but I don't.
Okay, no, well, it's
okay.
But I mean, afterwards, do you want a copy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Happy to supply it after.
Can you
Thank you.
email that through to me
No
after,
problem.
Stacey, so I can upload that on Monday?
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, to begin?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this is about the Transport Action Plan for Bromley. And it's just to give you an idea of where we're at in terms of the work that's been done. So the study area is broadly within the area bound by Buckley's, Ruru, Dyers and Linwood Avenue. It's predominantly residential neighbourhoods to the east and industrial uses to the residential to the west and industrial to the east. We've got activity centres at the Eastgate Mall, which is the main one for the area. And there's other ones at Walkup, and there's some shops on Linwood Ave itself. And the school for the area is the Bromley Primary School, which is on Cubes Road. So this should just be a quick run through of where we're at in terms of what we've had a look at in the area. So we've key observations of traffic flows and the highest traffic volumes for the area is along Bromley and Keeleys, over 5,000 vehicles per day. Hay Street and Ruru is around 2,000 to 3,000. And we've also noticed that the 85th percentile speeds for the area are generally above 50 kilometres an hour. And this kind of bears out in the consultations that have been taking place with the residents as well, and their observations has come back through that. So it all seems to align. Key site observations include the width of the carriageways through the area, particularly Hay Street. It's really wide. There's not much there in terms of self-enforcing speed limiting factors to be applied on the street. So it's pretty quick. And yeah, it's we've got parking on both sides, which is also, you know, a use of the wide road. We've had a look at what current speed reduction measures are available on site. What we found is that they're pretty ineffective. They've got minimal vertical deflection. So people are still having no real issues going through there at speed. So it's not really working as a deterrent. And the interventions themselves are spaced too far apart to actually be, you know, keeping speeds down through the links as well, not just at things like intersections. So this is a summary of the feedback that we had. Yep. So this is the summary of the feedback that we had from the public, and it centres around high speeds. That was the main one, and another one was the speeds and the amount of heavy vehicles, particularly along Hay Street, which I think is the link between Linwood going through to the industrial area on Maces to the east. So bearing in mind those, we've been taking those forward in terms of developing interventions, and we'll see those as they come through as we go along. But those were the main ones. As I was working on the SURF projects, they were centred on places like Ruru, Hay Street themselves. So they were directly targeted at these problems as well. So just to summarise quickly what we've got through, there is other stuff as well, like accident data, you know, crash data that we've looked at and things like that. We can give you those because they're part of the slides, but they're just for time. They're not included in this initial presentation. So yeah, vehicle speeds concern, poor pedestrian provision. So connectivity is an issue. People getting around, particularly to the school, was one of the issues that came through. And obviously the wide carriageways are helping, you know, encouraging people to go pretty quick, especially when there's not enough interventions to try and curb that. So the action plan itself has got an approach for working in as a local focus. So it's really targeted at the people that live within the bounds that we've discussed in the study area. It's focusing on the locations of pedestrian and vehicle conflict, which tend to be at intersections, and the pedestrian connectivity. So we're talking about how people move about, not necessarily at the intersections, but desire lines through pathways and that sort of thing, and routes to schools. The focus is obviously on reducing speeds, because that's a major concern for the area, and discouraging heavy traffic. And there is a focus on developing the best bang for buck, if you like, in terms of getting as much interventions in there that are effective for the amount of money that you're going to have. So what we've done is we've categorised the identified treatments, and all those dots on there relate to a site intervention. So there's four groups. We've got gateways, internal intersections. So the gateways are the ones on the outside. The internal intersections are obviously the ones within Bromley itself. There's some mid-block crossing and some mid-block traffic calming features as well, along the lines of speed humps, that sort of thing. 121 in all. So just to give you a quick overview of what the treatments are. So from the top, it's the low cost, least amount of work involved in producing that. And the ones at the bottom tend to be the more intervention, more cost. That's the internal intersection treatments. So from the top ones, we've got the similar to Rolleston Ave, where you've got the poles and the paint, all the way down to full lifting of the intersection as a tabletop, that sort of thing, and then the drainage issues or problems that need to be addressed in order to allow that. Mid-block traffic calming treatments. Again, we've got the cheaper option, which is the rubber stick downs. And then you can go down to more expansive procedures where you reduce the width of the road, and then adjust the curbing. We can add more landscaping, that sort of thing, but it all comes at a cost. And then the pedestrian mid-block crossing treatment. So you can go from something fairly innocuous, like drop curbs, maybe some slight road narrowing, to something down there, which is the pedestrian zebra crossing. So that's the more expensive option. So we've looked at the budget estimates based on producing low spec treatments, mid spec, and the high spec ones. So those come through as we go along. So like I said, 121 treatments were identified. So we had to look at getting a prioritisation of those treatments. Funding was obviously unlikely to do all of them in one go. So we went through a scoring system to evaluate which ones have been the most important, based on where they were located, what they would give in terms of public amenity. So we had mid-block crossings, for example. They were given high priority because they help the pedestrians move about, and they give you connectivity. Speed treatments were prioritised as well, based on the prevailing road speeds that are encountered and the desire to make those slower. So what we're seeing now is the just still shots of the GIS, which we'll go into in more detail. But from the prioritisation, we were able to break it down into what the 4 priorities. Priority 1, which is the most important in our view, we ended up with 50 treatments, 33, 20 and 18 for the others. Based on using the low cost model for interventions, we were coming up with the prices that you can see down there. So to do 50 sites, you're looking at 2.4 million, and priority 2 sites, 1.5, and so on. And those dots that you can see on the screen are the location of the interventions relevant to priority 1. So like I said, 2.4 million for the low spec. If you went for the higher spec version, you'd be looking at spending 5.6 million. to put in those 50 sites. And if you, it's quite crude, but we did if you put some in that were high, some were low, and you've got a mid ground, which is about 4 million. So that's it in terms of where we're at on the choice, the prioritisation. If we can go through to the GIS model itself, we can actually start to pick and choose, which ones are favourable to yourselves and your community.
So we're focused on within the priority one, and we want to work with you to try and find what we can fit into the budget that's in the current budget, the current project. And the way we normally work is we'll budget those conservatively, because if we go, great, we've got 400k left or something like that, and we tender the whole lot, we know it'll probably cost more because we'll find coal tar and all sorts of other things. So what we normally do is hold that back and put out about 60% of the remainder of the budget in there, and then we may have money for a few more sites. So we'd appreciate if we work through, go, what are we going to focus on for around the 400, 450 mark for construction? And then second priority, where if we had the money left over, or we are able to piggyback on a resale site or something like that, we might be able to improve that, the number of sites we can do.
Okay, Kelly, just because you want to leave. Yep.
That's good.
No, we're having
just
problems with
speak
the mic.
loudly.
Look, anyway, look, again, thanks for the work you do. My initial question is, did you follow the Aranui Streets for People project very closely and see how that evolved in a very similar community?
And our colleague works on that in our senior team, and I've received some guidance on that from Ned this morning, that probably the transitional materials, the painted bollards, isn't going to be the way to go, particularly on where one of the key sites we'd look at would be the threshold treatment on Linwood and Hay. Received quite a few submissions in the engagement we did. So that would be where one, or where you've got heavy vehicles of high use, you're probably wasting your time with a cheaper approach, and you're better off to go to permanent materials. If you thought it was going to be a trial, there's kind of a mid-house where you could go for stick-on or bolt-on materials that you could pull up and use elsewhere, but a key threshold treatment, you go straight for permanent materials.
So, yeah, I guess the point that I would make is that there was extensive consultation and a lot of themes came back that were very, very clear. One is that an overwhelming number of people were actually quite happy with speed humps. Not so much bollards on corners, although they understood what we were trying to do at council, that wasn't very popular. And in fact, it's the loudest series of voices and the largest number of voices that I've ever seen at council regarding a project, in the streets. And there was a lot of really great learnings about how to engage with people and what their preferences were. Some were quite surprising. I mean, I remember being quite surprised by a couple of people that I thought wouldn't think a speed hump was actually a preferred option, but they actually thought that they were really effective. And the data showed in Hampshire Street in Aranui that the overall average speed dropped 13 kilometres an hour, which was a really big win. So I'd really encourage you to talk to the people who are involved in Aranui Streets for People, because they saw the whole thing, and the engagement team, Hannah Valentine. And that was really interesting. So I'd really encourage you to have a chat, because it's a not too dissimilar community with similar sort of problems. I'm sure Yanni would have opinions on that as well, having been seeing that firsthand. So
thank you, Kelly.
That would be my advice, because I have to head off soon.
Continue with the presentation.
Yeah, and good luck with it. I'm sure you'll do a great job.
Thanks.
If we can jump down to the first priority and
Yeah.
show you how that works.
Should we start with just showing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what you can see there is the priority one sites are shown in the various colours, and they relate to what type of intervention they are. So you've got the orange ones on the outside, which are the threshold treatments. The blue coloured ones are the speed threshold. The speed treatments. The orange ones are the internal intersection treatments, and the very lime greeny coloured ones are the mid-block crossing locations. So based on the priority one sites I spoke about that were about 2.4 million for the cheaper option, that was 50 sites, and obviously 2.4 is not a price that we can work with at the moment. So we've looked at to break down and almost like cherry pick interventions based out of that priority one set, and we've come up with the ones that at the moment we think are going to cover the concerns of the community in order to to provide A, the bang for buck, and B, the effective solution as a transport action plan. So on the case of these, you see the little like a thicker border around some of the circles. They're the ones that have been selected to be chosen or potentially to go ahead. As you can see in the top right hand corner, based on which cost profile you use, that gives you an idea of how much we think they're going to cost. And for the really cheap ones, which I understand may not be the way forward, based on the RNUI now. So we're looking at 653K for those, and then it goes up based on what you put in.
So I've got another bit of news.
Can you just tell me what roads those are, because I can't read them.
So Hay Street. That's Hay Street.
Hay Street.
Then McGregor's coming down.
Yeah.
Down through.
So carry on.
So a way of spreading the effect further for the money that we've got is either going cheap materials, not the way to go, evidently, or piggybacking on other work like reseal programs, and did some check around this morning, and Hay Street has been considered for reseal next program. I've followed that through the first couple of teams into where maintenance have it. It's now got to go through a combined program looking at, if you're, for example, I'm not saying Hay Street's in there, but if there is a major rebuild needed on certain sections of pavement, and doesn't do it, and often it may not make sense to do that without doing some other things like channel or something.
Oh, thank goodness.
So that's something that's been considered a program called the Street Reconstruction Program, and I understand that's coming around the boards next month through there. But I'll be working with the teams internally to see if we can get Hay Street in there, or when it can get in there, or what form that would be. Because if we can piggyback on that, it means we've got more money out of each of those interventions to say put onto Keeley Grant to school.
So how long would that be away, that Hay Street?
That's the very question I asked the maintenance schedules. And it's affected by a number of things. They've got to go and do pavement testing, and obviously if it's not just a straight reseal and they've got to do dig-outs, that changes how they program. So we don't have that information. But I will be pursuing it.
All right. Yanni?
Thank you. So just the program for next year hasn't been developed yet, as I understand it. It'll be just placed on the website when it's available.
It is through the next team to look at how they're going to program it. The roads that are, or sections of roads that are going to go into that program are there. They've just got to figure out how they're putting them together
Because I asked staff to give me what had been done over the last 12 months, and they sent through the road renewal thing. I think the problem at community board level and for the people in the community is there's no visibility of what, so like couplets and Metro Place were done, but we never knew that they were happening. So if we wanted to do anything, we wouldn't have had any opportunity to. But just looking forward, there was supposed to be an assessment as part of the LTP or an annual plan for the surf ones that were paused. Is that assessment happening, or what's the bigger picture process around determining which of those transport choices programs will continue and what won't? Is there any clarity we can get?
I've only got the communications that went out to the community, and you would have got them. The difficulty we have, some of them were, this is just my understanding.
Yeah.
Some were went back to CRAF, and that was covered in the last releases, and some are still on hold.
Yeah.
Aren't they? And I think Bromley falls into that.
Yeah, there's four that are on hold, which is the Westmoreland Cycleway, Talatai Cycleway, improving Bromley roads, and the Simeon Little River connection. But they're all supposed to be assessed as part of it, either an LTP or an annual plan for consideration. But I don't know what the process is that's happening. So maybe you know. So that's fine. I think the board.
Could we go back through the chair and ask that to be posed as a question? That's about where I operate. So
just at the, I guess at the higher level, looking at like the information that we've got, I guess I'm feeling a little bit confused about process in terms of community engagement. Like, when do we get a plan that then we go back out to the community and engage around what the priorities are? I'm picking up, I guess, on Kelly's point, because of the way, I mean, this process has been going on since 2017. So a lot of people have dropped out, have become disillusioned. There's also new people that have come on board since then to say, hey, we've got concerns as well. But I'm just kind of wondering, at what point do we get a sort of draft plan with the community that we can go and engage and consult on what we're proposing to do?
That's what we're here.
Okay, that's what we're here to establish.
That's the next step. Let's go. We've received your input. Here's what it looks like in a plan, and we'll go back to engagement and consultation and see what we need to do next.
Because of the delays and because of the lessons that we've learned from Streets of Pilwhata, is there a way we can go and talk in the community with the community members about what the options are as we develop the plan?
We've already had like extensive meetings with the Bromley community, and a lot of this actually came from the Bromley community to begin with. So I wouldn't be going back to them until we had, something that we had that they can consult on. We actually can consult on, because this has come out of consultation.
I don't know when the last community meeting was. I think it was probably 3 years ago.
No, it wasn't 3 years ago. Rory might remember when the last community meeting was for the Bromley roads. Rory, we were there.
Yeah, definitely wasn't 3 years.
No.
I'm not going to cancel that one.
No.
I think you were out there with Georgina.
Yeah, we were.
And other people.
And just so the final question from me is just thinking like big picture stuff. We don't know whether there's a route assessment for the MCR that goes up through this part of town, but we haven't seen it as a board or elected members. But when I look at like Hayes Street, and given the concerns that are being raised, I kind of think about the Healthy Streets presentation we've had as well with transport planners, and look at the opportunity to develop a healthy street, or what we used to as a city call a living street, or whatever phrase you want to use. But the idea of doing a road reconstruction or a renewal that improves cycling access, slows traffic down, puts in greenery, seating, all the things that we now know in terms of roading that are community building, rather than just putting in hard curve and channel. So I just look at the map and think, have we considered a kind of a permanent intervention that would achieve a number of different objectives around things like connectivity? I mean, most of the stuff you had at the start of the list, I totally agree with. I'm just worried that the temporary or the current proposed interventions are, I guess, smaller scale and won't really deliver on a holistic vision for, like, say, what we would traditionally do under a road renewal.
If we're going to do road renewals, we'll see the costs blow out like phenomenally. I mean, we're talking about Hay Street being a reseal, not a rebuild. Is that correct?
That's the name of the layer in the planning tool. And it may, what pre-seal works they have to do in terms of dig outs and pavement reconstruction, that depends on the results they get back from the pavement testing and things like that.
Have we got good asset data? Because this has been raised, like, so originally we were told that one of the problems with Hay Street heavy vehicles and buses was that it had earthquake damage, and so that was creating a lot of vibration, so it needed to be renewed. And now we've got to, I think there's segments of it that were crap we're going to renew that didn't make the priority list. But then there's other segments that aren't as in bad condition as the board. But do we have the roading condition for the roads?
This is that's how it gets into the reseal program. So I've worked with the assets, you mentioned assets condition.
Yeah.
I worked with them and saw, really guys, is that really where Hay Street sits?
Yeah.
And encourage them to come back out and have a look, and they went, oh, okay. And that's why it's in the resale program. The concern resale program has come through. So general route, my understanding of it, the way I work to try and get things in like Hay Street, you go from assets, as you pointed out, and then it goes into the maintenance, and then after maintenance, there'll be, oh, hang on, this is more than just a reseal. Then we need to consider other lots of money like curb and channel, footpaths. You mentioned a bunch of other sources of money, and that's what's been trying to be put together, is my understanding of the street reconstruction program. We're not doing this in isolation going on. Oh, it's a reseal. Oh, no, we should have done it. Doing the curb and channel.
I'll be quiet now.
Okay. Have we seen all of the presentation at this point?
Yeah, but now's the chance for you to be able to pick and choose. And then because Hay Street, my understanding is that it will be in there sooner than anything else. I think if I could ask if that's where we should focus and see get Stacey to take us through. Yeah. Because I think that's the best chance we've got of spreading our money as far as we can in here. And then move on down towards the school.
No, that's fine. Let's go through that then. Stacey.
Yeah, sure. So we've looked at the gateway intersection from Linwood into Hay Street. That would need to be reduced in size in terms of tightening up the radii, but to promote slower speeds for traffic turning in. The left turn in is a particular problem. And then the interventions for the speed humps have been distributed so that they act on keeping the speeds down throughout the whole length of Hay Street, rather than just one and then another 140 metres you get another one, because then you can just speed up in between the two to counteract the fact that you're being made to slow down for the intervention
itself.
So
what sort of spacing is ideal for that?
Between 50 and 80 metres, I think, to keep them at a slower speed. And this area, I believe, is also set aside for the Safer Speeds programme. So I think that's going to be coming down to 30.
It's
already down to 30, but it's not.
So now we've got to change the environment. So it looks like a 30.
Well, it needs to be self-regulating. Otherwise, you're going to have a police there.
You'll have noticed that there isn't the Hay McGregor's intersection isn't highlighted there. I've given Stacey and our experience from surf in there. That was a very expensive intersection to deal with. We're also getting into having to interact with the 66 kV cables underneath the like that. That's why I've suggested that that's a bigger job for later on in the budget. Sorry.
Yeah, that circle as well isn't a true reflection, because that circle should cover both of those, Butterfield and McGregor's together. So it's a big chunk of work, but it was at a big cost as well. But yeah, so we've taken them up to the intersection with McGregor's, and then you can see this graduated pink pimple going on. That's the Bromley schools at the epicentre of that. So that's those circles are 200 to 500 metres away, to give you an idea of perhaps walk distances and that sort of thing between the school and the outlying areas. So in terms of accounting for walking to schools, we picked the routes that take you from the school to various parts of the residential areas. So those have been highlighted as well as areas to receive interventions, be it the traffic calming or the internal intersection treatments. And also based on the concerns of the public again about the the heavy vehicles that are going through Bromley into the industrial areas in the east. Keeleys and Bromley Road is targeted by heavy vehicles as their preferred.
Point that out as you talk, because I can't figure
Oh,
out
yeah.
what street you're talking about.
Is that okay to get up?
Oh, yeah, that.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so if we go for Keeleys and Bromley, which is from the Bromley, that's it, yeah. So that's a nice, convenient route for heavies to take, and it takes you pretty close to the school. Along Bromley, and then you get into, which is the industrial area of Maces. So that was, again, as an ideal location to start putting targeted interventions aimed at improving connectivity to the school and also keeping speeds down and making it less likely for heavies to want to use it. It's, having to slow down all the time and get going. So hopefully they stay on the arterial and go through that way. So that's pretty much it. And it was a case of just taking out interventions until we get to a point where we have, the pricing structure based on those three profiles up there.
So could I provide a couple of bands for you to guide us through, Stacey? I think we should be aiming for, I'm pretty sure we could have sufficient risk provision to be able to say 10 to 450k.
50k.
We would expect if we didn't use all of that risk provision, we might eventually be able to deliver up to 600 a bit over.
Okay.
But for example, you go to put an AC speed hump in, we've made a generous allowance for it there, but you hit coal tar, that could add another, $2,000 just for taking coal tar. You find some services, you'd be into another few $1,000s for pavement pits just to locate where the surfaces are. So it quickly cuts down. And that's what the risk provision is for. If we try and do it in 2 bits. So if we could try and find something that, the highest priority ones that you'd wish to see in a scheme for around the 450, where would that take us?
All right.
Stacey?
Oh, yeah. Stacey.
Well, I kind of think it's mainly up to you.
Right. Well, okay. My question at this point: the rubber stick downs. How effective are they in actually slowing speeds?
They work well. I think there's more of an issue is how long they last. I think people tend to be more concerned about. But the ones that are down on Rolleston Ave, for example, I use them every day.
Right.
Yeah, it does slow speed down. The fact that you've got the cyclists going out all over the place as well helps to keep the speeds down because there's a lot of confusion going on there. But they're holding up pretty well, and they take a lot of traffic. So
they would be the cheaper option than a regular speed. Can they be used, like the rubber ones, in conjunction with speed humps? So where we've got these things here, where we could have a big speed hump, then a rubber one, and then a bigger speed hump. Would that be an effective, cheaper option than putting all speed humps? I just know, like Hay Street, it's very definitely a racer street. And we've put all the signs in there, and the word from the community is we're not going to pay any attention to their stupid signs. We're going to continue. It's a straight road. What's their problem?
Absolutely.
So I'm very keen to get heavy vehicles off here. But if we go with the more expensive speed humps, then we might not be able to get them close enough together to be effective. But if we could intersperse them with rubber, is that an option? I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Okay. Celeste's got a question, and then Greg. Thanks. Oh, right, you're right. Okay, so we'll go straight to Greg.
So can I just make one observation for the record? I initially thought like you as well with the rubber speed humps. They're quick to put down and they're cheap, but they do require a bit more maintenance. They're also very dependent on what the pavement condition is underneath.
Okay.
And old chip, they don't work quite so well on
Yeah.
But
if we're looking at a relay.
lead us more towards going to AC on there. If you've got heavy vehicles, then you need to consider the vehicles landing on the other side and taking off. You might have to rebuild some of that.
Right, I'm hopeful that if we put a speed hump followed by a rubber mat, followed by a speed hump, trucks will go a different way.
Yeah.
That's my preference, Yanni. Oh, sorry, Greg, what was your question?
Is there a difference between the speed bumps you'd use for a residential car to be slowed compared to industrial traffic to be slowed, or is it the same thing?
Very much the same thing. Yeah.
And just sort of following on to Jackie's point there, is there consideration being given, it's like a case of changing habits, whether the asphalt speed bumps are put in and then the gaps in between are used with the rubber ones with the intention potentially of removing them at a later date, so that
that gives you the option.
It just seems that, I mean, every 80 metres, if I lived down that street, I'd be gutted if I had to slow the whole way through. But to change habits for a period of time, which is what we try, we're all creatures of habit. If we can change that, then over time the middle ones can be removed when they come due for replacement potentially, which means that the alternate sort of ones would then create a longer gap, which was still about the same distance as we've been told previously. That's a recommended sort of distance apart. That's sort of 150 metres. So it's sort of it's following some guideline, but giving the option in the meantime to slow much more, particularly through
hit them hard to start with.
If you were one of the residents in Hay Street, it's quite likely you would have asked for the speed humps, because that's who's been asking for. Yanni.
So I think what I'm struggling with is like we don't kind of have a draft plan, but when we look back at kind of the objectives, the outcomes that we've previously stated for this project are reducing traffic speeds, reviewing the current LATAM from 2002, vehicle movement analysis indicating that heavy traffic vehicles have been diverted to non-residential, resident surveys indicating local wellbeing and happiness improved, visual appeal is increased and improved in the area, and increased collaboration. There were also things like increased tree planting, etc. So I'm just having, I guess I see this in terms of speed reduction, but I don't see it for those other things. So I guess I'm trying to understand like how we kind of look at that bigger picture plan objectives that we've already previously talked about with the community. Because I guess what I'm worried about is visually, I have sort of pictures of the Worcester Street cycleway that got a whole bunch of yellow signs put up every, so often, and just actually people really hated it because it was just visually really intrusive and didn't feel very, very nice. And like when I think of the speed bumps, I'm trying to think of another stretch of road that would have so many speed bumps in such a small space and kind of what that visually would look like in terms of the community. And it feels, I mean, just it's in my mind, so I'm not saying this is what it's going to be like, but it feels from just looking at the dots on the road that it would look really, really ugly and not be very pleasant and not provide a real sense of better amenity for cycling, walking. It's just addressing the speed. So
yeah, I think that's their main purpose.
Right.
But I think like when we were showing just really quickly those images of what they could look like based on the cost.
Yeah.
The ones that were costing more were the ones that had the curb, that brought everything in. You had some landscaping going on, maybe trees and that sort of thing. So that can be done to improve the visual amenity of the street. But like I said, it will come at a cost as opposed to just putting down the.
I mean, I'm more than happy to go for a budget to do a proper healthy street, healthy Hay Street, whatever you want to call it. I feel like I still don't quite understand what we're doing to improve cycling or walking through the area too. Like, I don't know where the cycle connections are, but when I look at this whole area, there's no major cycleway going through.
There isn't, but at the start of the surf project, the Hay Street to Ruru was identified as essentially a cycle link, and those were factored in designs to start with, and then they were later on removed.
Correct. So could we get like a map of the way that the preferred route for the MCR? I think Celeste and I are trying to get one. I don't know where we've got to it.
Okay, we need to stay on track for today. We need to give there a bit of a steer. for what we want them to go away and do today in accordance with what they've delivered. So.
Well, I'd like an option for a road reconstruction for Hay Street into a healthy street or living street or whatever you want to call it. And I'd like to have some information about the cycling connectivity through.
Which decade would you like it done in, given the budget that we've got?
I'm happy to move amendments to council. The problem was we're just on the LTP.
That's right. What you're asking for is a decade away at least.
No, the good news is that council already has a resolution to look at the improving Bromley Roads project as part of the long-term plan or a future annual plan. And council's deferred all the transport projects reconsideration to September. So we've got time if we can get it. The problem is that when I go to council and ask for extra money, I'm told they don't have specific projects and it's not able to put it forward. So we've got the time to actually get what we want and put in a request for budget if we can get the work done to understand what the costs will be.
What's your answer to that, Peter?
We'll take that on board and we'll work with the design team to confirm if the information that we received during the SURF program still confirms where the main cycling routes will be. I do recall when we were doing the site visits, there was discussion about cycling routes and how we need to provide them for the intersection. And we purposely, but everyone was shying away from having to do something with that lower section of Hay Street because of the deep dish and the pavement and the amount it was going to cost per metre to do that. But we could take that and include reference to it in the scheme.
Or at least, I guess, having options around, if you want to do a healthy street, here's an indicative cost.
Yes, we'll do a linear metre cost. And,
that would be great.
Okay, Celeste.
Would we, do you typically, as part of your process with the Healthy Streets program or move it out? So I've had a meeting with one of them and they said that they can do an assessment of an area and then give you feedback. Sounds like quite a useful exercise in terms of getting those kind of good outcomes.
Well, that was something that came up today. I think that's part of what they're trying to do in the street reconstruction. There's, as you're saying, there's resources and money spread through various little
we're sort of deviating a little bit from what we're actually here to do today, guys. So
just to set off that, because I think I understand what Yanni's saying in that because we've got to work within what we've got. So, but also thinking bigger picture, what are we aiming to achieve? So can we do something now that takes into account we're working towards a wider goal? So if we start with this project, but we have a wider plan that is that kind of Healthy Streets model, then we can go away and get some work done now with that budget, but then go back to council and say, now we want to do the next bit, which is because we've got a wider vision of what we want.
Okay, so how about this? This is a GIS and we've got this so we can add layers to it. So why don't we look and go and see if we've got a Healthy Streets layer and they can identify sites in there if they've got money to do that, and the same with cycling. And we'll see if we can come up with them. Let's layers on and off and generate.
Okay. Greg.
Just the question around the effects of some of the other streets if these works are done, particularly St John Street for industrial vehicles leaving. So Bromley Road has works on it. What's the if we're trying to remove things from the industrial works from this trucks and that from the street, by putting stuff on Bromley Road, it's going to increase it around there. Has that been sort of something that's been factored into? I know you can't do everything in one go, but that's going to
on Bromley Road.
St John's, isn't it?
We have something in line. Do you know anything about the St John Street? Because we have something in line. We're talking to Transport about St John Street, and that would come under you. Yeah, have a track because we do have something separate for St John Street.
Yeah, it just looked like because one way and then
the way I see it, if we can stop the heavy vehicles going down Bromley Road, all right, then they would have to go out the other way. They wouldn't actually be in a position to get onto that one that goes around and links up with Linwood Ave. If they're not going down there, then they'd have to go somewhere else. So I'm not too concerned about the 2 dots between Linwood Ave and Bromley Road. But more so,
That's on Keely's you're talking about.
yeah. So I would like to see the work done on Bromley Road,
Yep.
then some bits around the school, and then focus on Hay Street. That would be what I would be looking at, because if they don't go down Bromley Road, the thing is they go down Bromley Road, they turn left, and then they go down Hargood and Radley, and we're wanting to avoid that. So if we stop them going down Bromley Road,
Yep.
then they won't continue down that road if they're not going down Bromley. So then, yeah.
And how would you rank what you're talking about around Bromley Road versus on Hay Street?
And then, yes, but looking at Hay Street, then, yeah, I'm looking at, perhaps to look at it the way I mentioned with that cheaper, the big hump with the flat hump, because that would bring the cost down. And then, yeah, behaviour modification. So when those platforms possibly wore out, we might find we've slowed them down or they've grown up or something.
Could we, for argument's sake, Charlotte, just unselect the rest of the speed humps on the upper part of Keely City? Getting to McGregor's?
No, not the ones that are down from Bromley Road to Linwood Ave. There's just the 2 of them down that way.
Oh, yeah,
those 2? Yeah, I mean, that's, they're not right.
And by Karora and down towards
I mean, we do need something around the school, definitely, but Hay Street is of major concern.
Well, there's another 2 or 3 we could take out in there, and that would probably get us down to.
So if I took these 2 out.
So if the board can just look at what we've got in front of us today in terms of speed and indicate what you would like this team to go away and do in terms of what they're putting here today, right now, without actually talking about anything else to do with healthy streets. Yanni, you drive down that road, this is our area. What would you do in Hay Street?
Without doing a full road reconstruction.
We can't do a full road reconstruction and, now. We can certainly do it later, but we need something down there as soon as possible.
I feel like the problem is because we did the 30k speed without doing any design treatments, people become really cynical. And I'm just trying to think how you get around that, because, it's almost, I mean, the whole idea of doing this was we're supposed to do everything together. I don't quite understand how council jumped ahead onto the speed reduction ahead of doing the interventions. But I mean, my understanding was that there were people on Thomas Street that wanted some work done as well, right on the bend. And I wondered whether one thing could be put there. I don't know. Like we had a working party, and I'm not completely clear about the process, but I know there'd been concern around Jolly Street. But I guess the bigger picture concern for me too is that we've got a lot of intensification going on. So unless we start putting in things like cycleways now, we're going to be really, really restricted in the future because of the requirement not to have car parking and multi-storey, high-density type.
Yeah, we're getting off scope again. Yeah, I understand that we need to look at this going forward, but this is what we're looking at today.
So I probably wouldn't support so many of the speed humps in Hay Street. I would agree that and again, like we've done some stuff in Cypress Street. One of the other areas that came through the early meetings is around Rudd's Road and Kearney's, I think.
Okay.
Just trying to see whether the speed.
So that's getting us down to where the kind of scope that we could draw a contender in there. And now we just need another 150, but where would you go next to include in that, should we have the budget to do so?
Where would we go next from here?
So can you save that, Charlotte?
Sorry, I am finding it really tricky to see all the dots on the.
Yeah, it doesn't come up so well on the screen, does it?
Yeah.
And you should go from point.
You're allowed to walk round, Danny.
Go from point.
No, I mean, in terms of.
You can all tell.
No, but there's not. I mean, it's not. So
here on the bend, there was a lot of concern around
Is it Jolly
speed. Yeah, that's Thomas Street.
Thomas.
Jolly Street's just almost unrecognisable now in terms of the intensification that's happened. Probably without any sort of traffic assessment, the impact. But whether that corner would need something as well, I'm not sure.
There's work going on Jolly Street, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't know. But
It could be to do with the building that's going there.
it's going up a bit. And Rudds Road, so you've got Cypress, where we've put something. So we put something.
We're looking to trim, not add, honey, trim.
Well, those are in, aren't they?
Add 150.
So these are in. The concern that one of the really big concerns has been the speed around this corner and through here. So I don't quite know what this one is.
That's a mid-block crossing.
Mid-block crossing.
But you could easily, we own a lot of land here, so you could, I mean, something here, to me, around that corner, yeah, that's kind of like one of the key things that people could raise.
Is there anything going past from the school that we've seen out?
So Bromley School is, just highlight those, or point cursor, Charlotte.
Yeah.
So that's within the current.
So there are from Karora down there. There is 2 speed bumps up to the northwest, and then there are 2 speed bumps. There's another speed bump, and then coming down to Mid-Block Crossing. And then so that's actually one of the elements that was in the surf treatment in there. And then there is another speed hump highlighted to coming south from the school, and then along Bromley.
And that mid-block crossing is located so that people can get to the other side of the road, because there's nothing there at the moment for the parking, on-street parking that's there.
There's people to park across the other side. Kids have nowhere to
My
cross.
only feedback would be that I don't know this area as well as these guys, but the school seems like really high priority.
That's kind of where
we were catering ourselves.
See if we can do hay and spread our money more by piggybacking on the street reconstruction program. And then the next priority was around the school.
So Hay Street, school, and then Bromley Road. Tim?
Has there been consideration with the humps on Hay Street with the emergency services? Because the amount of saw there before, I was thinking for a fire engine to get down there quickly might be a bit painful, the wear and tear.
If you go for the black rubber, you can space those such that the vehicles with the wider tracking, which is like a fire engine, and buses as well, buses are more comfortable if they're not going over those bumps.
We don't actually want buses to go down there.
But they
No.
They're probably the other
But it would depend on what's in
They are.
the way.
Yeah, but because they're the wider tracking, the tyres miss the bump in essence.
But we may not be able to have many of those or any of those, depending on what the surface is like.
Oh, we have a look into that.
Reconstructed, then we're only going from pavement surface up. If it's not reconstructed, we have to consider down below the pavement. That's where our valuable budget gets poured into rebuilding roads rather than driving speeds. So those cushions, as Stacey was referring to, the rubber, they can also be done in HC as well. So you can make them so heavy vehicles can get through.
It's more about having the gap so that they capture.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I know we can't do everything because we can't, but I know with the crematorium, somewhere here would be quite nice to have something to slow traffic down that bend.
That's
Oh, that's the one I just told you.
Okay. We could squeeze one of those, or Stacey can take a note and we can see whether we can squeeze that in.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to say is Breezes Hampshire, I think we made a mistake, similar to this. We're coming out of Hampshire Street, turning left, you've got to wait for everybody else turning right, so the traffic goes back a lot. So make sure it's wide enough, still come left and go straight, coming out of there.
Okay. One final question from Greg, because we're at time, and then just.
Yeah, just around the speed cushion, see how they're narrower. It's almost sort of counterproductive. We're trying to get heavy vehicles off the roads in a way. If yes, it can allow a bus and a fire engine, but a truck also seems to be the same sort of width.
Yeah, good point. But like you were saying, if we
put them intermittently between them, but rather than
we have a
instead of using those.
There needs to be a compromise.
Yeah, it needs to be a bit of both. Yeah,
getting a balance really.
Yeah, as long as there's some of the main full size ones to keep your vehicles away, and then you can narrow it for stuff that still needs to.
Okay, is there anything else you need from us before we go?
No, we've taken a screenshot. We've got a grab of this.
Okay.
So we'll take it away and start to look at it.
Are you looking at losing parking?
No.
Like on Cyprus, the speed humps can be put in.
Plenty of
so that they can choose
down
to
there.
park there should they wish to do so, provided they're not a car enthusiast that can't do it.
So I was just going to suggest that you talk to ECAN about bus routes through here, because they can cut the bus routes, and also ECAN could actually control the buses speeding through here off service tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yeah, they can.
So we need to also keep putting pressure on ECAN around allowing the contractor to speed through residential neighbourhoods, and they must be able to monitor them with GPS. So again, I just think important engaging with ECAN around some of the things that they might be planning in future, but also how they can restrict the current operation.
Is that something you'd specifically like us to look at?
Oh, right, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. So the bus route actually, there's only 3 scheduled buses a day.
Yeah.
And it goes along Ruru and up Regis.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be.
No, it is nighttime buses that they're having difficulty with. It is end of service buses heading back to the depot that they're having difficulty with. Yeah.
But that's the irony, is that he can cut the regular bus services through this area that really upset people.
Yeah, and then
at the
they
same time gave a contract to a really bad a really bad bus operator who had a really bad social responsibility to do. And so that all the off hours buses are the ones speeding through. So it's quite, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? They cut the service that people need and put a service that is annoying people.
Yeah, look, thank you for bringing that up. I've tried some polite inquiries.
Yeah.
We might just have a chat with our ECAN councillors around that. Thank you very much for coming in. I think that's it's looking very good for me. I'm looking at being in the area. It's coming together quite nicely.
Look, we've set this up as a tool so that when you need to look at what you might want to do in an annual plan or certain other pots of money that may come up, things like that, it's always there.
Can we just get an update on the process? So what happens after this in terms of timeframes for getting the plan, consulting and coming back?
I will go and find out from our engagement team what would trigger having to go back and re-engage with the community. Because as the chair said, there's already been a lot of engagement with them. Once we have a design that you would approve to go out to the next stage with the construction, and it's still consulted.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well done, Charlotte.
Thank you. Okay.
In the meantime, we'll send you the presentation.
That'll be great.
Yeah,
Thank
on
you.
Monday.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to take us right in a minute. Okay. No, I don't know. Right, we're clicking straight into our last item, which is on Zoom. Keegan and Rachel, do we have you here?
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Okay. And so we're talking about tsunami information.
Oh, okay.
Good to go. Here we go.
Can you guys see that all right?
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect. So kia ora. I'm Keegan Huckleberry. I'm the Civil Defence Emergency Management Planning Coordinator, and I'll throw to Rachel to introduce herself.
Kia ora koutou, ko Rachel toka ingoa. I am a Community Resilience Coordinator for Christchurch CDM.
Rachel's going to do the bulk of the talking for this presentation because she is our in-house tsunami expert, but I'll just control this and move the slides as I'm commanded to. So we'll crack into it.
Sweet, thank you, Keegan. So we're going to talk to you today about some tsunami risks and impacts. So what I'll just do is go over the basics of tsunami hazards for you, just to give you that bit of background. So essentially, a tsunami can be defined as the sudden mass displacement of water. So we're talking about something that generates a huge amount of energy that can displace a really large amount of water very, very quickly. So we've got 4 generation mechanisms for tsunami. So earthquakes are the most common. So about 90% of tsunami are generated by earthquakes. We've also got landslides and volcanoes. So that can be a subaerial landslide or a subaerial volcanic eruption that enters the water and displaces the water that way, or it can be a submarine landslide or volcano. So below the water where it's displacing that water and moving it in a similar way to an earthquake. And then we've also got meteorite impacts. So a lot less likely, but again, if you had a meteorite impacting the ocean, that's going to be moving a very large amount of water very, very quickly. So that's why we put that one in there as well. But tsunami is a Japanese word, so it comes from their word for harbor wave. So that kind of sounds quite nice and quite tranquil, a harbor wave. But what that is just reflecting is that once you get a tsunami wave into a much smaller area, so for example, going into that harbour or a bay, you're really taking that energy and compressing it into a much smaller space, which means that the amplitude of the wave increases, which is why we get those really big waves at the coastline. But when a tsunami is traveling in the deep ocean, they can actually travel up to 1,000 kilometers an hour. So really, really quickly to cross the ocean to come towards us. And tsunami travel in wave trains, so generally between 5 and 10 waves. So sometimes that misconception with tsunami might be that one big wave has come in and that's that, and people might go back down to the coast and be really at risk because there could be lots more waves on the way in that wave train. Could I have the next slide, please, Keegan? Thank you. So we define tsunami as having 3 different risks for us here in New Zealand, and that's based on the travel time, so how long it would take those waves to get to us. So we've got locally, regionally, and distally generated. So you can see that first circle there, region 1, that's our local risk. So that's originating from really close by to us, so anywhere on New Zealand's continental shelf. So that's defined as taking less than an hour to reach us here in New Zealand. So quite a short arrival time there. And for those hazards, we're really trying to push for people to observe and respond to natural tsunami warning signs. So within that hour, there might not be enough time for civil defence to be sending out official warnings. So the public observing and responding to those natural warning signs. And I'll talk a little bit about those signs in another slide later. And then we go up to regionally generated. So you can see that second circle there, the 1 to 3 hours. So they're originating from the Southwest Pacific. So basically taking anywhere between 1 and 3 hours to reach us here. So we've got a little bit longer, which means that there is the potential for official warnings to be sent out in those instances. And then we go all the way up to distally generated. So you can see all the different colours there around the ring of fire all around the Pacific Ocean. So basically distally generated is defined as anything that is 3 hours or more, but you can see there, you know, if it's coming from Mexico, Central America or South America, you've got between 9 and 16 hours because it's coming all the way from the other side of the Pacific Ocean. So much more time there for civil defence to be sending out official warnings to those who are in the tsunami evacuation zones. Could I have the next slide, please, Keegan? Thank you. So hopefully Keegan's going to be able to play these animations for you. So the first one that's playing now is a locally generated tsunami that's coming from the southern Hikurangi Trench. So that is the trench that runs down the east coast of the North Island. So it's classed as that locally generated because, as you can see, it takes just about an hour for it to reach us in Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. And then these simulations they come to us from GNS Science and Environment Canterbury, and they're basically based on worst case scenarios. So you can see there that that one was generated by a magnitude 9 earthquake. So a very, very large earthquake there on the Hikurangi Trench. And we can play the second one as well, Keegan, if you can. Thank you. So this one is technically classed as locally generated for New Zealand as well. So you can see right there that it's on New Zealand's continental shelf, coming from the Pusica Trench. But actually for us over in Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, it takes that little bit longer because it's got to wrap all the way around the bottom of the South Island to come up to us in Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. So it's taking more like 3 hours to reach us. So it's almost more of that regional hazard for us by the time it comes around to Christchurch. And again, that's based on that worst case scenario, magnitude 9.3 earthquake. So the different colors that you're seeing shows the water level. You can see the scale there. So the red is a really tall part of the wave, so the peak of the wave, and the blue is the trough of the wave. So you can see lots of different reds and blues, which means that lots of different waves are coming in. Like I said before, the 5 to 10 waves in the wave train. So not just that one wave, a whole train of waves. And if we could go to the next slide of animations. There we go. So this one that Keegan's just playing for you now is regionally generated, so coming from the south of the Kermadex. So again, based on a magnitude 9.3 earthquake, so that really big earthquake, and it's reaching Christchurch in about 2 hours. So it sits between that 1 and 3 hours of the regional risk. And maybe we can also play the distally generated one at the same time, Keegan, just so we've got both of them going. Thank you. And this one's coming all the way across from the west coast of South America. So it's that distally generated tsunami, a magnitude 9.45, so very, very large indeed. The largest earthquake ever recorded was magnitude 9.5 coming from Chile. So you can see there, it's taking, it's already 15 hours and it's just there coming into the bay. So takes a really long time for us to reach us here in Christchurch, but that means that we've got more time for those official warnings to be sent out to everybody. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of all of the different risks that we face here and how we categorize them into local, regional, and distal. Next slide, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say that these scenarios and modeling is excellent, but it only shows us the wave height in the water. It doesn't show us any land inundation, so just bear that in mind.
Thank you. Yeah. So the advice that we've got on one of those natural warning signs is long or strong, get gone. So if an earthquake is long, as in it's longer than a minute, or strong, as in it's really difficult to stand up whilst there's that earthquake shaking, the advice is to get gone if you're in a coastal area. So go inland or go to high ground as quickly as possible. And I will also emphasize that it's long or strong. So if it's either of those things, take that action. It doesn't have to be both at the same time. And if we go to the next slide. So long or strong is just one of the natural warnings that we can get for tsunami. There's also sea level change. So there's a phenomena called the initial withdrawal of the ocean, which is where the water recedes very, very quickly before that first tsunami wave comes in. So it doesn't look like a normal wave crashing on the beach and going back out again. It's more that you're standing at the shoreline and then suddenly the ocean is gone. So it would be a very, very noticeable change in sea level. And that could tell you that a tsunami is on its way. And also unusual noises from the sea. So there's been reports from people in past tsunami events where they have reported that the ocean sounds a little bit like a roaring noise or like a jet plane, a sign that a huge amount of energy is coming towards you essentially, and you need to get yourself out of that area. Next slide, please. And we've also got lots of methods for official warnings as well. So it's not just those natural warning signs. We use emergency mobile alerts or EMAs. So we had a test of those quite recently back on a Sunday in May. So your phone makes that loud noise and you get a little bit of information about what the emergency is and the action that you need to take to help protect yourself. We've got websites and social media. So for any emergency, we're updating the council website and the social media pages like Facebook, for example. And there's also different levels of civil defence. So regionally and nationally, civil defence will have those messages on their websites and social media pages as well. And then TV and radio. So we can broadcast tsunami warnings and warnings for all different hazards through TV and radio. They're a great help to us. So we have memorandums of understanding with TV and radio broadcasters that they put out emergency messages for us, which is good. Next slide, Keegan, or anything else that you want to add as well. Sorry, it's a bit more difficult when we're not in the room together. And we've got 3 different tsunami evacuation zones. So red, orange, and yellow that you can see here on this map. And then you can also go to our website and type /tsunami, and that will take you to the map where you can look at where your house is, for example. You can zoom right down, or you can type in your address to see which evacuation zone you're in and what that means. But essentially those 3 zones, we've got red, which is beach and marine. So that is essentially, if you ever needed to evacuate that zone, it would be staying off the beaches, staying out of the water, and just getting away from those areas, essentially. And then we step up to the orange and the yellow tsunami evacuation zones, and they are the residential areas. So not just that beach and marine, it's those residential areas where we would be needing to evacuate because land inundation is expected. So the yellow is our worst case scenario. So we would only be evacuating that zone if we thought that something really, really big was coming, essentially. And I think the measurements are, I think if it's 0.3 to a meter, that's when the red zone would be evacuated. Orange zone is 1 to 5 meters. And then that yellow worst case is 5 to 8 meters. So it's a much, much bigger wave that we would be evacuating all the way out to that yellow zone for. And the campaign is called Own Your Zone. It used to be Know Your Zone, but I think they decided that it wasn't enough to just be know your zone. You need to know which zone you're in, but you also need to know how you're going to react. How are you going to evacuate, for example, if you ever had to leave that zone during a tsunami? Next slide, please. So tsunami evacuations. So civil defence encourage people to walk or cycle if they are able to during an evacuation. So we're aware that obviously not everybody can do this, but for those people who are able to walk or cycle, it can really help because it means that you're keeping the roads clearer for those who can't get out by that method, and also keeping the roads clear for emergency service vehicles as well. So the advice is to only drive if you really need to, but each household should be thinking about that. So thinking, what route am I going to take? And also, what method of transport am I going to use? Having a grab bag ready is really helpful. So we recommend this for all different hazards, but really, really useful for tsunami. So if you needed to leave your house in a hurry during an evacuation, you don't want to be running around looking for all the bits that you need to pick up. You want to have that bag that's ready with some really important stuff in it. So for example, some food, some water, a first aid kit, important documents, things that are difficult to be replaced like that. And then just comfortable clothes to be evacuating in. So maybe like a raincoat, nice warm layers, comfortable shoes. Obviously, we don't know what time of year an evacuation might happen. So yeah, making sure you've got that raincoat and warm layers just in case. And getting to know your neighbours and people around you as well. So it might be that you think, I would be fine to evacuate, but actually I know that my neighbours next door are a little bit more vulnerable. Maybe I should have a conversation with them and see what their plans might be for something like this. And maybe if you're going, you could all go together to support each other. And lastly, the emergency services have very little time. So not only would they be trying to get their own assets out of that evacuation zone, so they would have received that same warning, trying to move all of their appliances and everything like that out of the zone so that they can help people outside of the zones. But also it would be a case of how much time do they have, and do they want to be staying in that zone and putting their staff at risk? So we try to encourage people to have their own plans ready and to think about their evacuations, because it might be that people are not coming into those zones, you're only getting yourself out. Is there anything else that you want to add, Keegan? Because I think that one is the last slide.
Maybe I'll just wait and see if there's any specific questions that that is the last slide.
Excellent, thank you for your presentation. Celeste and Yanni?
That was really interesting. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, yep.
That was really interesting. I also thought the visualization stuff was quite helpful. With the what was it called? If you don't mind going back to the first slide, which was the near, what's it called? The Hikurangi Trench. I guess that's the one we've talked a lot about in regards to Pages Road Bridge. It says at 1 hour. Is that sort of, is there a range? Because I'd heard estimates of much less than that.
So oh, sorry.
You go, Rachel.
I was just going to say, so for us here in Christchurch and for Banks Peninsula, so there would be slightly different times. I mean, maybe we can play the animation again as well whilst we're talking. Thank you, Keegan. So there's slightly different times for obviously for it entering Pegasus Bay and also hitting the peninsula. So you can see here, it's going to touch the peninsula there at just before an hour, but it's still making its way into the bay there to reach us in Christchurch. Maybe what you might have heard would be about different regions of New Zealand, for example, because for those on the east coast of the North Island, it would be reaching them very, very quickly. It might be sort of, 10 minutes and it might reach them, whereas it's taking a little bit longer to come down to us, sort of approximately around that hour mark. Yes, but hopefully that animation gives you a bit of an idea. And like we said, these are the worst case scenarios. So really, really big earthquakes where it's arriving very, very quickly. It might be that when it does happen, it arrives in, 50 minutes or it arrives in an hour and 10 minutes. But sort of, as Keegan says, models are great, but they might not necessarily be right. But at least it gives us a bit of an idea that it's going to be sometime around that 1 hour mark for us down here in Christchurch.
With regards to the emergency alerts, I can't remember what's in them, but do they say evacuate the area? Like, is there a clear direction of what to do? Because I wonder sometimes with the earthquakes, the long, strong, gone is a great catchy thing, but I feel like sometimes if there's an earthquake, you're sort of not always instantly thinking tsunami, so the association between the two, so knowing to leave the area, that directive kind of needs to be quite clear.
Yeah, so there's a number of different templated emergency mobile alerts, and some of them will just kind of say that there is a risk of tsunami, and if you are in this tsunami evacuation zone, to evacuate. And then there is what's called the Tsunami Experts Panel, which is headed up by the National Emergency Management Agency, GNS Science, and a few other very intelligent people that will assess the risk of tsunami to different parts of New Zealand, which will then trigger more detailed emergency mobile alerts being sent out with evacuate to this area. This is where you can go to find more information, et cetera, et cetera. But the character amount for those emergency mobile alerts are quite limited, so they have to be very specific and smart with the messaging they convey. But it is targeted to geographical areas based on the cell towers around the phones, and it tells you which zones that you may need to evacuate.
I'm sorry, with the panel, is that a pre-decided thing? Because I'm assuming the panel doesn't meet after the earthquake.
Can you clarify your question? Sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
You know how you said there's more of a technical response, technical alert? Is that in regards to, I didn't quite understand, you said that there's like a generic template? Yeah, so when a large earthquake, landslide or something happens that has the potential is likely to generate a tsunami, they will issue a templated emergency mobile alert for specific geographical areas, saying that there's a risk of tsunami and that you should evacuate. And then the Tsunami Experts Panel will meet and assess to what degree the risk is posed to different geographical areas of New Zealand and provide targeted
emergency mobile alerts for specific areas with more kind of confirmed and solid information.
And I guess that would be most useful when it's a long range tsunami, right? Because if you're getting people together to give detailed instructions after that, then it might be a bit late.
Yeah, so quite often the tsunami experts panel, there just wouldn't be enough time to stand them up for a local, and in some cases for regional source as well. So regional source is anything between that 1 and 3 hour mark. So if it is closer to the 1 hour, there might not be enough time to get those experts into a room to get that advice. So in those instances, it would be, it would be that messaging of long or strong, get gone, or it would be, receiving those warnings and just evacuating. But like you say, if it's that distal tsunami where it's coming from across the ocean, we've got a lot more time. So for that experts panel to be standing up and to really be assessing it and giving us a much clearer picture of what's going to happen. But even so, in those cases, we would still be looking for the evacuations to take place as quickly as possible so that we can get as many people out of the zone as fast as we can whilst we're getting that more detailed information through.
Yanni, then Joe.
Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at like some local areas, and I just kind of wonder, like the red zone's only the river and the water areas. Is that generally how it works?
Yes, so the red zone is that beach and marine zone. So like you say, it's like those areas in the water, down by the beach, and then, like along some of the waterways, because the tsunami waves are always going to take the path of least resistance and come up those waterways. So you can probably see from the zones there, if you've got them in front of you, that they extend much further into the city if it's coming up the rivers, so past where the rest of the zones go. So we would be advising people in those instances to stay off the beaches, stay out of the water, don't go down to the river or anything like that. But in those cases, just for the red zone, it's not like a inundation that is expected. It's not like a residential evacuation. It's just staying away from the waterways, essentially.
I think it's important to note as well that not all tsunamis are that kind of biblical wave that you see in movies. Some of them are a lot smaller, but are still very turbulent and quite dangerous in those marine and beach areas, which is why we have those red zones. So it may not be that biblical wave, but it is still dangerous in that area.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of wondering how we've assessed, like, obviously we have an earthquake. It's kind of, you've got a lot of things like cliff collapse, rock roll, to some of the coastal areas as well. So is there any kind of messaging around that? Like, I'm just thinking of places like, Sumner, Red Cliffs, where the natural design might be to go up to get away from the, get gone, but long and strong, but actually you might be actually going into danger as well.
Yeah, so good question. Thankfully, in Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, we have no known tsunami-genic fault lines, so faults that are capable of generating a local tsunami, which is why the Hikurangi is our worst-case scenario for a locally generated tsunami. And so nothing's going to happen in and around us that is going to be so intense that it's going to cause rock slides, etc., as well as generating a tsunami. With the Hikurangi, and the reason that the messaging is long or strong is it's likely that we would get a long earthquake from the Hikurangi rupture, but not necessarily a strong earthquake that would cause the large rock slides that you're talking about. But it is something to be mindful of. But it's kind of the messaging kind of balances the weight of probability and what's likely to be more destructive, the chance of rockfall or a tsunami. And so the messaging is to go to high ground as quickly as possible.
And just related to like local community plans, like particularly in areas like the Wolston Island that's surrounded by the red zone, like is there any, I'm just trying to understand what local planning is taking place with the local community around what to do in that regard, like, because obviously there's a state highway that's got limited access and two pretty old bridges, or one very old bridge. Is there any thought into, you're better to go north rather than south, or any sort of discrete planning around movement of people where there's going to be a lot of hotspots?
Are you talking about like evacuation planning?
Like, well, if you take like Garland's Road by the tannery down that, it's really narrow and congested. And there's, you know, some communities that will need to, possibly if they need to get out, that the capacity may not be there on the road network.
Yeah, so partial answer to that question is that's also why we encourage people to walk or cycle if they're able, is to reduce that congestion. And in most instances, rather a lot of instances, walking and cycling can be faster than driving out of tsunami evacuation zones, purely because you avoid the gridlock. But in the other part, partial answer to that question is we are awaiting agent modelling for evacuation so that we can have a better understanding of what the best evacuation routes are and where communities could go for the best chance of evacuating those areas. That work is taking place. It is not something that is done by us as a council civil defence emergency management team, but as soon as we have it, that will help to inform those plans.
And just finally, like the messages are good, I understand that, but daylight savings, we always go to check your smoke, check your smoke alarms and check the sirens. But is there any messaging or campaigns that you've got about people being prepared and having a get ready bag? Or, you know, one of the things I've suggested previously, like Wellington does, is that at our service centres, we actually make some of these grab bag kits available at cost rather than leaving it to the private sector to profit off it. But just having a campaign around people being prepared and being ready, because it feels like we had another earthquake tomorrow or in a few minutes, that a lot of the city wouldn't be prepared, even though we've been through the most extraordinary set of natural disasters.
Yeah, good question. I can't talk to the grab bags, but I know, and Rachel will jump in after me, so something she's quite passionate about is that on the shakeout every year, which is where you practice your drop, cover and hold, is also combining in that day with a tsunami hikoi. So practicing what your home evacuation plan is or your workplace drill is if you get notification of a tsunami. But I'll throw to Rachel because she can tell you more about that.
So with the tsunami hikoi, like Keegan said, I think a lot more people are aware of the shakeout event in October, but it's sort of got that extra piece of, if you practice your shakeout and then if you're in a tsunami evacuation zone, whether that's you live in a tsunami evacuation zone or you go to school there or you work there, whatever it might be, to practice that hikoi out of the area. So getting together with who you live with or who you're at school with or who you work with, and practicing that route out of the zone. So I suppose as well, seeing how long it takes you to walk out of the zone or to cycle, if that's what you're doing, seeing if there's a different route you can take, depending on how easy or difficult you found that evacuation. And then, like you said as well, the grab bags. So it's something that we promote quite often. So whenever we do a presentation, whenever we go out into a community or we attend a public event, we're always promoting people having those grab bags and knowing what to put in them. And we also have, so some of the merchandise that we give out is a tote bag, and it's got like a list of things that you could put into a grab bag to take with you. So trying to give people an example of what they can take with them. But yeah, I think there is always more that we could do in that space, like you say, and maybe getting together some bags as well, some pre-made bags as examples would be really helpful.
Thanks, Johnny. Jo?
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I know you've answered a lot of these questions, Rachel, through the work that the Brighton Emergency Response are doing. But when it comes to people knowing their zone, what kind of communication are the council putting out to actually educate people about which zone they are in?
That's a good question. So these zones are available on on the website, and it sounds like you've all had a look at those and that you've got them in front of you as well. What we need to do and what we're thinking about doing is updating those pages, because at the minute there's quite a lot of information there, and we're aware that it might not be super digestible at the moment. But having these interactive maps and trying to promote to get people to look at them and to know which zone they're in, but like we said, to own that zone and to practice walking out and what they would take with them and all those things. We have presentations that are specific to different hazards, and one of those is tsunami. So going through some of the slides like you've seen today with members of the public to try and get them more familiar with tsunami and try to get rid of some of those misconceptions that people have around what a tsunami is. And then also, like you say, engaging with members of the community. So, for example, like those people in Renew Brighton, for example, where they're doing lots of work around trying to get their community more prepared for if like a tsunami evacuation was ever to happen, because there's only 8 people in our team, so we really try to work in with those local communities, and they do lots of amazing work to get their community really engaged in this kind of stuff, because 8 people across the whole of Christchurch, it's not enough to be going to everybody. So trying to work in with those local communities and to get them to help spread the word for us.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we hear is that people don't know where to get that information or where to look. And it's a matter of how do we actually make that easier? How do we actually get the education out there? A lot of people who don't live in our ward actually think they've got to evacuate too, and actually educating those people that they're actually quite safe and they don't need to evacuate. They let the east come out of Christchurch, not get in our way.
No, and maybe that's something that we can take away from this meeting today, because we are always trying to think of better ways that we can engage with community, and like you say, if there's people that think that they're in a zone when they're not, so for example, it might be that they weren't in a zone at all and they were safe where they were, or it might be that they've accidentally gone into a zone during that time, like if they've been confused. So trying to make sure that we get that clear messaging of which zone you're in, or if you're not in a zone, and what to do.
It's I'm up at Wanganui at the moment, and I've said to you before about the wonderful signs all over the lampposts which actually have evacuation and pointing to which way you evacuate.
Yes.
And then it goes, when you get to a sign that says safe zone. And I think it would be a really good thing for us to do.
Yeah, so currently we don't have any tsunami evacuation signage in Christchurch or Banks Peninsula. So that includes information boards down at the beach, or those signs, like you say, that are pointing in the direction of tsunami evacuation routes. There's currently a national review going on at the moment, which is looking at the tsunami evacuation zones, but also the tsunami signage. So when that comes out, we could look at starting to put stuff like that in place that obviously will conform to those new standards that will be set. But until those are set, I don't think we would be putting anything in place, because then it would be a case of we'd have to change it once those new standards come in.
Okay. I think it would be quite a good, easy way to educate people too, if those signs were actually around and people could see them as they're walking down the street or hanging out at a mall or something, and they can actually see, oh, this is our zone we're in, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, like a visual reminder. No, I agree.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Jo. Just to elaborate on something Jo said, because she's concerned about people who are having to, who are evacuating who don't need to. I would say there's a lot of people in the city who are in a red zone that won't know that they will need to evacuate. As Yanni was saying, like the people around the rivers, people who are living along the Heskett or along the Avon may not be aware. That's an area that possibly needs looking at as well, because I know my neighbours, I live on Richardson Terrace, and I'm in a evacuate zone for red, but I'd say my neighbours probably don't know that.
So the red evacuation zone is only for beach marine. So if you're in an evacuation zone, you might be right next. Oh, in yellow. Yeah. So yeah, but you're right. So it does come into the it does come much further into the city along those waterways. So if you're living near to that red zone that runs in the river, it might be that you are in that yellow worst case evacuation zone. So yeah, obviously it is really important for people to be learning which evacuation zone they're in and what that means for them and how they can respond.
Excellent, thank you, Rachel. Any more questions? Okay, that looks like us. Thank you so much, Rachel and Keegan, coming along. That's been very informative, and thank you again. So
no worries.
No worries. Cheers.
So,
thank you.
The closing karakia, please. E tau, te ranga Māori. O te rangi e tui hone. O papa tua nuku e tākātou nei. E tau e whai nei. I runga i a tātou te hei Māori ora. Thank you, everyone.